Welcome to the Jehovah Chronicles with your host, Cosmon Cal.
Yeah, I feel good right now. The atmospheric, green skies, the gang coming. I be in and out, so leave that thing running. Purified is preferred. Higher frequency, a higher bird. I observe on a different nerve. Breaking codes, I am the yoga. Deadly as a Ruger, straight and a shooter. Out the holster with this mudra, inoculation with the wisdom. Creator shape my prism and hit them with no schisms. Perfect. Reason turn the light up. Y'all disappointing like 9 to 5 and some write-ups. Something rearranged, let that boy cook. Organization 33, stay up in them books. Lead them boys shook. 46 divided, yeah, I'm Port Michael. It was only rightful that I came up in this cycle. They say they gangsters, but they telling it. Step outside, take off my shoes, and let the sun hit my melon, Had to be learned that the herb beat the medicine. It's the same matrix, so who you think you better than? Perfect.
My name is Kirsten Penalosa.
Sunflowers bloom, some may get big and tall, but not for you and me. Sunflowers bloom, but not for me and you. We just bloom and let go, big explosion. Some float away, it's just the wind that takes them. Some are waiting on a hand to save them, and that will never be because you don't want me now. Zephyr Hills is sunny, won't you water me, cover me in your feet, make the ocean sing, whoa, bring the rain down. Some others know they'd rather leave than fall, but at times I don't think. Some lovers hold on to what lets them go, like me let them receive, and I will never leave because you don't wanna be here now. Oh no. Set the hills are sunny, but you gotta be cover me in your feet, make the oceans and go. Make it for me, baby, I'll be free from you. Make it for me, baby, I'll be free from you. You cry, wait, my heart hurts so bad.
Create a gang is crazy. Boy, y'all better pay attention.
Ever wondered what your home looks like from space? Enter your address and get a 360-degree satellite view.
We fight as a single, impenetrable unit. That is the source of our strength.
Shout out to the Mama Chief. Yeah, you be quiet when Big Mama speak. What she gave us is a part of me. It flows through my arteries. Even on that journey, that love grows how the garden be. The first to teach us when we sick, the first to heal us. Mama's boy, yeah, you know, her pride and joy. Soul food, yeah, you know, I'm an enjoy. Calm you down just by the sound of her voice. There isn't another feeling inside when they cheering you on at your game and you feeling the pride. You and your siblings fighting, she gon' make you put them feelings aside. She can't lead you down the road, but she can give you the guide. Where you think I get that blissful look in my eyes? I need a side of ice cream with them eyes apple pie. You know for sure for Mama Chief, you know I'ma ride. Cause we all need our Mama Chiefs. Yeah, we all love our Mama Chiefs. The greatness, the patience, the foundation, the knowledge passed down so many generations, our motivation. I just want to thank you for my creation, cause we all love our Mama Chiefs. Yeah, we all need our Mama Chiefs. Yeah, we all ride for Mama Chief. The dedication, I seen your tears at my graduation. Now look, Ma, your boy that made it. You the reason I'm one of the greatest. Yeah, cause we all need our Mama Chiefs. Yeah, we all love our Mama Chiefs. Yeah, we all ride for Mama Chief. Now be quiet, let Big Mama speak.
Hill Road One production.
Hurricane 313.
Fuck a president, fuck a dictator, fuck the prime minister, cause they all haters. We the revolution, be the revolution. Fuck the president, fuck a dictator, fuck the prime minister, cause they all haters. We the revolution, be the revolution. Agenda 2030, I don't think he heard me. Fuck the government, cause they tryna do us dirty. Waking up early, gotta grab the hammer. Have a fed hanging on the wall like a banner. Feel like Bruce Banner, turn it to the heart. Throw a dictator through a motherfucking car. Tell the prime minister, should've been the listener. True hunter, kill his ass like a killer one. Hit him up, got a bunch of bullets that'll fill him up. Tell the coroner, come and motherfucker pick him up. Spin a truck, we gon' ride out for another hit. Who to get? We gon' kill a motherfucking globalist. Solar fist, knock your head off from the outer space. Not a case, you would disappear, yeah, without a trace. United States is a corporation that is out of place. Burn it all down, let's do it fucking right away. Fuck the president, fuck the dictator, fuck the prime ministers, cause they all haters. We the revolution, we the revolution. Fuck the president, fuck the dictator, fuck the prime ministers, cause they all haters. We the revolution, we the revolution. Smart cities coming, gonna be a trap. Fuck the electric cars, but them bitches getting hacked. Gotta grab the strap, I ain't getting chipped. Busting out the feds as I motherfucking dip. Hop up in the whip, yeah, they got to slip. To my hideout, gotta plan another trip. Flew up from Michigan, head up to Switzerland. Killing world leaders cause they take from the innocent. Dissident, fuck the government, knock them down fast. California fire, that's a motherfucking land grab. Panama Canal, that's another fucking land grab. Clone lab, baby red, damn I think I'm gone mad. Don't laugh, see the light flash from the chrome blast. 44 mag, take your motherfucking dome fast. United States, it's the shit we gotta burn fast. Revolutionary, take your motherfucking world fast. Fuck the president, fuck the dictator, fuck the prime ministers, cause they all haters. We the revolution, be the revolution. Fuck the president, fuck the dictator, fuck the prime minister, cause they all haters. We the revolution.
Be the revolution. Fuck the president. Fuck the dictator. Fuck the prime ministers, cause they all haters. We the revolution. Be the revolution. Fuck the president. Fuck the dictator. Fuck the prime ministers, cause they all haters. We the revolution. Be the revolution.
Hurricane 313.
Yeah, the game coming, creator came coming. Turning up the light and watching boys start running. Let me tell you something, we ain't out here doing nothing. I can tell you scared, boy, niggas stop fronting. If it's all in the plan,
Creator Gang is undefeated. Creator Gang is undefeated. Know that. Know that. They not like us. Separate the real from the fake is a must. We stand on Creator and no God we trust. Team Kemet got crushed into powder and dust. Woo! Kemet looking bad now. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many men down? Look at us all running, ducking, trying to skip town. Now power one it in. You Hebrew, what you Kemet now? Siding with the people that enslaved your own people now? Chop you up into pieces and throw you in the river now. Bet you right beside you get ate by Kemetic crocodile. Look, we got them running, covering square miles. Scared to death, what's left? Only to take the crown. Get smashed down on your own stomping ground. We took over like the Hicksos on your turf doing a disco. 2-stepping, no half-stepping with the info. You wouldn't even know the book of the dead, bro, if it wasn't for the translation done by my sparrow. Your time's narrow, semi-missiles blow out your arch arrows. Arches down, so goes the pharaoh. I saw him reading the glyphs like he an expert. But where he learned that from? This about to hurt. First translation came from Samuel Birch. European Egyptology gave you it first. You couldn't translate a bird to a word without looking up them European definition verbs. Y'all niggas acting like y'all blackity black. Fronting to the people, man, y'all niggas actually whack. Your pathetic Kemetic creation meant it's a trap. The blind leading the blind with no actual facts. Shabario Saze, you softer than Sade. Come to find out he followed Yahweh. That was your execution. You Rosicrucian. Western thought you using. You are quite confusing. Don't know what you doing. How my eye got you moving. Right now you are losing. At your wake I'm viewing. R.I.P. communion. Mummy wrapped in ruin. OSP is ruling. Science has been proven. All motion moving. You live in an illusion. Who you think you fooling? Think you need some schooling. It's like Reggie out here living in a ghost town. Walking around like I see dead people around. I don't believe in spirits, but I believe them now. Stuttering Stanley, you can have a seat now.
Stuttering Stanley, stuttering Stanley, stuttering Stanley, stuttering Stanley. Shut up, you freak.
Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. 69 gods. 69 gods. Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. Freaky ass Kemet, they got 69 gods. 69 gods. 69 gods.
What's wrong with you, hope?
Creator Gang is undefeated. Creator Gang is undefeated. And it's gonna remain that way. And it's gonna remain that way.
Yo. Cosmon Cal checking back in, man. Of course, it's your host with the most. It's holding that fire like a roach clip, man. Hey, this is so-called Black History Month, right? So during American History Month, because I haven't figured out what a black is yet. You dig what I'm talking about? What nationality they are, what their genealogical ethnicity, culture actually is for a black. It seems to be a social construct, that a catch-all term that seems to be able to be applied to anyone who has brown skin, because obviously you dig what I'm talking about. Everybody who got your skin ain't your kin. You dig what I'm saying? That's obvious. As y'all come in, man, go ahead, thumb up the video, support the channel. You know what it is. You dig what I'm saying? We right back cooking. Who we got up in here? Yafa up in here. Now what up in here? Johnny James up in here. Sister Tabitha up in here. Cloud Kicker. Yeah. Anakwa Kaiki. Huh? Anakwa Kaiki, the Cloud Kicker. Right? That's right. That's right. Just me and this thing. Jaway up in this thing, man. Peace to my brother Jaway, man. You dig what I'm saying? Peace to your wifey too, and everybody. You dig what I'm saying? Milestone up in this thing. Angelic up in this thing. You dig what I'm saying? Who else we got up in here? Lawrence Burton up in this thing, man. You dig what I'm saying? We just gonna get to cooking real quick, man. This is just some of the American history, right? Since this is American History Month, I wanted to cook on some of the American history, the stuff that they don't tell us. Because, you know, they're quick to tell you that we got this peculiar institution of chattel slavery here, but they don't want to tell y'all that it was the pale-skinned European who was indentured for centuries. That it was him that you actually fought for in 1859 to 1865 to free him from chattel, indenture, peonage, penalized enslavement, enforced enslavement, period. A lot of people haven't heard this story, so we're going to let the scholars speak, and I'm going to just fall back and just share some of this history. You dig what I'm talking about? Shout out to the serpent god, King Morpheus. Shout out, brother. Shalom to you. You dig what I'm saying? We ain't gonna keep it going too long. You dig what I'm saying? I'm gonna let the scholars speak for themselves. You dig what I'm saying? Ain't too much I need to even say. Right? Let's get into this.
I'd like to introduce.
I fast forwarded a little bit. This is from Frontline. Now, this is from years ago, y'all. We gonna blow this up, but I just wanted to get into this real quick. Absolutely. Shout out to you, brother. You did what I'm talking about. We gonna just cook a little bit on this. When you get into white slavery, you dig what I'm saying. You gonna run across a lot of misinformation, and even if you ask an AI or anything like that, the focus is always going to be on Africa, like it wasn't nobody else in the world being enslaved at this time, right? But prior to, you did what I'm saying, what's commonly known, we see a melanated hierarchy in Europe and in America, and people being put into peonage, slavery, serfdom, indenture, and none of these things are different from each other in practice, just in term, right? They try to soften the blow when you're rewriting the history. Of course, you don't want to be the bad guy, and also you don't want to be the brunt of the joke, right? So when you get a chance to write your story, you always make yourself the big boss dog, but this is the part of the story they don't never tell you, right? Let's get into some of this American history that they don't talk about. This is Jehovah Chronicles number 213. I'm Cosmoni, Anakwakaiki, the cloud kicker, Let's kick all that bullshit that they talking about, all that pie out the sky. That's why they call me the cloud kicker. I'll stomp on all that pie in the sky. Shout out to my sister Sharice too. Put me on to this too. Salute to you, baby sis.
Something I can tell you about this extraordinary book.
Hope y'all can hear it. Try to turn it up as much as I can.
As a TV documentary, this is what we thought. Its origins are Australia. I was in Australia on holiday. My wife is Australian, and I was in that wonderful institution, the Mitchell Library in Sydney. And I came across there. Understandably, the Australians are kind of interested in convicts and transportation, and they have a vast collection on convicts and transportation. And I came across an astonishing book. It was very old, very obscure, and it amazed me. It told of how women were in the 18th and 17th centuries and children too, were shipped and sold in America. And I'd never heard of this. I never heard of the details. And while this only told a bit of the story, it disturbed me and encouraged me and horrified me. So I thought, great story here. And Don and I had been talking about how do we sell a story about the abolition of slavery? we've been talking about it and we hadn't come up with anything. I came back to England with the photocopy of this book, and he will tell you what happened then.
Well, I suppose that I'm Laurel to Mike's Hardy, in that it was another fine mess he got me into. In that I read the photocopies of what he had brought back, and what he brought back was photocopies of a book written by a man called Abbott Emerson Smith, who had written about how women, mainly prostitutes, but all sorts of other people as well, who were taken out of the Bridewell prison in London in the early 1600s and sent off to the new colonies in America as brides for the planters, if you like. So these were women of marriageable age or a breeding age or whatever, who would be sent off, because up until then, of course, you had a brand new colony, it was all men. And for this to become viable, they needed women. And this seemed to be an astonishing thing. And so it went from there. And one looked at this and thought, well, this is just the tip of something. This is actually the edge of something here. And so the very fact that these women were taken out of the penal system in Britain, in England, and sent off to the new colonies with no say for themselves about whether or not they went or not. So the interesting thing was, what was it they were going into? What was it was already there that these people could just be taken out and shipped 3,000 miles away? And so we started to look at what this possibly could mean and what the wider context was of that. And that's how it began.
And we unearthed a wider and wider story. We found it wasn't just women, it was children, it was convicts, it was prisoners of war, it was all sorts. It was so people who signed up as indentured servants to get to America free of, they didn't have to pay the passage, the poor. They would be contracted, indentured by merchants and by captains and by planters' agents to go to America free, in return for which they gave up their rights to their labour for several years. It was supposed to be, according to history, it's 4 or 5 years. In fact, it could be as many as 12. And what they didn't realise was that they were signing away all their rights, and they had become chattels. They were used as property, regarded as property. Now, as we
Did y'all hear that?
began to
Did y'all hear that? I don't know if y'all caught that. I know it's kind of low. I tried to find one with a better volume, but he said the indenture, right? They were snatching people out of jails, hitting people with petty crimes, kidnapping, just snatching whole families and shipping them over to the Americas, right? Under a guise of law that they were doing them a favor instead of killing them and leaving them in the jails over in England, right? So they thought, and many thought, they were signing indentures to come over here and work for a couple years or whatever. You dig what I'm saying? But in fact, they were signing away all their rights, in a sense and in practice, making themselves slaves. Watch this. I'm gonna let him tell you again. Watch this.
What they didn't realise was that they were signing away all their rights, and they
Hold
had
on.
become several years, and by captains and by planters' agents to go to America free, in return for which they gave up their rights to their labour for several years. It was supposed to be, according to history, it's 4 or 5 years. In fact, it could be as many as 12. And what they didn't realise was that they were signing away all their rights, and they had become chattels. They were used as property, regarded as property. Now, as we began to investigate this, and we used all the kind of resources that investigators do, we look at every kind of book, every kind of official report, etc., diaries, letters. We realised it was an enormous story, and it was also something which refuted one of the great ideas, one of the key ideas of the development of slavery, which is that in 1619 slavery began in America with the arrival of 20 and odd Negroes, as they were called, sold, according to accounts, by a Dutch captain to planters in England, and this was where slavery began. Well, it wasn't true.
Did you hear what he said? It wasn't true. The 1619 story isn't true.
To planters in England, and this was where slavery began. Well, it wasn't true. Slavery had begun earlier. Children and women and convicts had been sold earlier than that, and they although a small number of Africans were subsequently brought to Virginia and sold over the next decades, only very few, only 350 years later. Oh, sorry, 20 years.
Only 300 Africans. They said far before 1608, 1609 that they started this practice and created the Virginia Company and start bringing these people over here. A lot of people don't know. They talk about 1619 and the 20 some odd Negroes, which this brother just proved. And these are the historians with the records, by the way, just proved that the story was not true. They have been taking Europeans since the 1500s. Now, this doesn't come as a shock to the faithist who understands that the time of expiration comes at the end of Escra, or 1450 BC. It is the next 400 years from 1450 to 1850 that we're talking about on this timeline right now, right? We go also into in Europe at the same time, 1450 to 1850, into a mini or little ice age. Same time. This starts the exploration. This is what they're looking for. They starving in Europe. You dig what I'm saying? Crops failing. You dig for years. These people are starving. They looking for any hope. Right? This is why they put so much money behind men like Pizarro and Colombo and Magellan. And you dig what I'm talking about? All these great so-called travelers of the world. You dig what I'm saying? Who I call that are called discoverers. Also, understand that in the 1500s, the word discoverer meant spy. So we've gone to debunk the whole narrative that first of all, that it was really any significant amount of native native Africans in America enslaved in the 1600s. He said it's only about 300, and they're being documented. Right? So where is all this African black nigger slavery? And we see that for the most part, who had already been enslaved during the end of the 1400s, the 1500s, and now in the 1600s. Europeans. This is the part of the American story they don't never tell you about. Let's keep cooking.
Later. But meantime, hundreds, thousands of poor whites were being brought in and on various.
Listen to what he said.
And they were being enslaved.
Hold on. He said only about 300 so-called Africans, but hundreds of thousands of Europeans.
A small number of Africans were.
Let's go back a little bit. Let's cook some more.
Planters in England, and this was where slavery began. Well, it wasn't true. Slavery had begun earlier. Children and women and convicts had been sold earlier than that, and although a small number of Africans were subsequently brought to Virginia and sold over the next decades, only very few, only 350 years later. Oh, sorry, 20 years later. But meantime, hundreds, thousands of poor whites were being brought in and on various convicts and children, etc., and they were being enslaved. So that started us thinking this is an enormous story. It was a story too big, in fact, to sell to television. There were so many aspects of it, we didn't know how to compact it, but we did think it was an important and terrific book.
Yeah, and the question was, if we were right on what was going on, the question in your mind immediately is, as a journalist, is, well, Why doesn't everybody know this already? Or have we just got the wrong end of the stick here? And that is, of course, everybody's fear. I mean, it's the fear if you're doing something contemporary, just as it is if you're doing something that's historical. That the famous kind of thing was that I remember when we worked in World in Action was there would be the person who would turn up with 3 briefcases full of documents. And your first thing in your mind was, is this person a crank? Or are they real? They've got a bee on their bonnet, they feel aggrieved, something terrible as far as they're concerned has happened in their lives. The question in your mind is, am I on the edge of a great story here, or is this another one of the astonishing numbers of cranks of the kind of a green and red ink brigade, yet again turning up with 1,000 documents to prove something which is totally and utterly mad and it's just a bee in their bonnet. So, of course, we were immediately worried about that as well. But we noticed certain patterns that, as we start to look at this, that appeared. One of which was that when you looked at these early people who were sent out, like Mike just talked about, children were sent out, street children were rounded up and sent off. And when you read about the official versions as to why this was happening in the very early 17th century, the official versions were always that this was a great humanitarian thing, that they were taking these poor urchins off the street and sending them off to start a new life in these fabulous new colonies, where instead of having a dead-end life where they die on the streets of malnutrition and illness, they would be given a new chance. Well, if that were true, it suddenly occurred to us, we would surely know that, because that would be one of the greatest humanitarian things that's ever happened in the history of the world. So why was it that that's where it was painted up at the time, which it was? Even John Donne, the famous poet, who was the Dean of St. Paul's, actually gave sermons from the pulpit of St. Paul's Cathedral about how this is a wonderful humanitarian thing, that these kids who have been sent off for this fresh chance. Now, if that was true, why isn't it something, you'd know that at school, you'd be taught about it. But interestingly, it's something which at the time was made a big deal of, but not now. It's not on any syllabus. So there was obviously something odd about this.
Well, it's still perpetuated. You find that some history books still talk glowingly about how starving kids were sent to America and apprenticed. You can find it where it happened at Bridewell, St. Bride's Church. I believe there is a commemoration of the apprentices who were saved and sent to America. Well, we looked at the documents, as you should. We looked at every document. I'm sure historians must have done, but they missed a lot, because those documents showed that these children were picked up and they were going to be sold, and what they were going to be priced for, and what rights they didn't have. In fact, the company gave to itself all rights over these children. It pretended to anxious parents, there were some, that no, they would be given apprenticeships, they'd get land in the end. Nonsense. Most of them were dead within a year anyway, but this is still perpetuated. Sorry, I interrupted there.
Quite right.
But thank God there are loads and loads of documents from the 17th and 18th centuries, and amazingly, and to be proven, to look at, to see, well, why hasn't that appeared? Why hasn't that been used? And you can test, as a journalist should, assumptions against these documents, and you can find that many assumptions are wrong. So perhaps some of ours are, but certainly a lot of the general historians' assumptions are bloody wrong.
And that was really our starting point, was to see why these assumptions had grown up, and why it was that what we were seeing in the contemporary documentation seemed to show a completely, if you like, a parallel universe. There's the official story, and there's the unofficial or perhaps true story, and we see huge parallels today in so many things, and it shows that spin was alive and well in the 17th century, just like it is now. You have the official story about what's happening, and then you have the hidden or covert story about what is really going on.
You hear that?
That's what we find that we were actually going after here.
You hear that? He said you have what's being taught, commonly being taught, and the narrative being told, but then you have what's really going on, what's really been hidden. Huh? The narrative has been reversed. The narrative has been reversed. Huh? It wasn't primarily niggas in America enslaved in the 1700s, 1600s, 1500s. By the way, the Ottomans, right? The Tunisians, and the Corsairs, right, all Muslim groups, were eradicating Europe between the 1500s to the 1800s. They literally ravaged from Greece to Italy to France, Portugal, Spain, up into Brittany, which is Ireland, Scotland, England, all the way to Russia. They was raiding the coastal regions, and by 1500, it is documented that there were 1.25 million documented. Not everybody who came, those who were documented, people in North and Western Africa, slaves, at the same, and this is at between the 1500s and the 1800s, at the same time, you supposed to be supposedly getting snatched off the coast by some pale-faced European, who just literally walked into Africa, who give me 7 niggers and a bottle of rum. That's how you think it worked? No. What you're gonna find out is that American Indians owned pale and dark-skinned Europeans. American Indians owned pale and brown-skinned Africans. Brown-skinned and white-skinned Europeans owned pale and white Africans. Right? Some American Indians got caught up in this trade too. Right? This is business, right? And at the time, man was the currency, right? This is why it was important to get them to sign the indentures, basically, in a sense, waiving all their rights, enslaving themselves, right? Putting themselves in a position of peonage soon as they sign it. Because right then you got to pay for, if nothing else, you got to pay for your crossing, right? Beyond the fact that many of them were already criminals, right? Some of them real harsh criminals, some of them trumped up, you dig what I'm saying? Type charges, little petty offenses. Many of them were children, is what you're going to find out. They were children. You dig what I'm saying? This is the story they don't want to tell you. Now, they'll tell you, oh, you got a little European in you. You got a little European in you, boy. Somebody done raped your grandmama there. Now, no. Come to find out, the reason you might have a little European in you is because your great granddaddy was hunching on one of his indentures and one of his slaves. Now, you got to understand, the same way that they tell you about slavery, this beaten and inhumane system is not what the American Indian did. Our system was more like indenture. You get it for a certain amount of time. I teach you a skill. You take the skill and you go on to build your business. You might get a stipend and a piece of land because essentially those who bought your indenture were paying or buying the promise of 50 to 100 acres. These are called head rights, right? But what you're going to find out is that they taking tons of little kids who get their head rights. They don't even know. Sound like a recipe for slavery to me. I took it back a little bit. Let's keep cooking, guys.
That's a true story. And we see huge parallels today in so many things. And it shows that spin was alive and well in the 17th century, just like it is now. You have the official story about what's happening, and then you have the hidden or covert story about what is really going on. And that's what we find that we were actually going after here.
Let me quote you from that great man, Thomas Jefferson. he was worried about the idea that convicts, lots of convicts have been sent to America, and God forbid, some Americans have been descended from convicts. He wrote this: "The malefactors sent to America were not sufficient in number to merit enumeration as one class. I do not think that the whole number sent would amount to 2,000, and being principally men eaten up with disease, they married seldom and propagated little. I do not suppose that themselves and their descendants are at present 4,000, which is little more than 1,000th part of the whole inhabitants. At that time, 1,000 convicts a year were being sent to America. According to unimpeachable sources, if you can believe convict traders, in Maryland alone, 600 a year have been going for 60 years. Tens of thousands of convicts have been flooding America, but does America want to know? No, it doesn't, and it hasn't ever since. You've got all kinds of self-delusions. I mean, you've got ideas about why America was so preoccupied.
Crazy. He brought up self-delusions, but these are delusions of grandeur that have been pushed upon our people. Look what my brother Just Me asked. He said, I wonder, is this why they changed our names to their names? That right there is a misnomer too. That's a falsehood. We gave them our names. Johnson, Jenkins, Rivers, Peoples. You dig what I'm saying? These are Aboriginal, indigenous American names already found in the tribes here. Perkins, Anderson. You dig what I'm saying? Those are names already found here. Ain't none of that over there. They didn't come over here speaking English, so they wouldn't have English names. Remember, we taught the world English, right? In America for thousands and thousands of years. We have had a signed language. How do you think the Aztecs did deals with the Maya and they spoke different languages? How do you think the Maya did deals with the Okono in Michigan? Everybody had Ottawa, Okono, Michigan, copper. How is y'all talking to us? And we speak a Algonquin-based tongue, Algic. You dig what I'm saying? And y'all speaking the Mayan tongue, which I do not believe is Nuatu. Right? So, how did we do business? How did I get your corn and whatever you was raising? And how did you get my copper? Huh? Through our trade language, which was signed. See, what they don't understand is a language is not only written, a language is not only spoken, but a language is also signed. Huh? That sign, how do you think they came over here speaking the Gaulish tongue of France, huh? And did deals with the Iroquois? Because if you do your hand like a wave, everywhere in the world, that's water. Everywhere. Right? For instance, hold on. Let me show you. Everywhere in the world, this is water. I ain't got to say a word to you to talk to you. What does this mean? Everywhere in the world, we know what this means. Everywhere in the world, we know what this means. Everywhere in the world, we know what this means. What does this mean? Come here. What does this mean? Go over there. What this mean? Down, way over there. That mean over there. I ain't gotta. That what I just expressed to you is the American trade language, commonly misnomered as English. That spoken and signed language was in the 1500s and 1600s, given a Latin-based script, right? So they could turn around and give the Algonquins a Bible in a script that sounded or was written like the spoken and signed words sounded. This is why Algonquin is written in modern English script, but most languages are written in a modern Latin-based script. It's just backwards, right? You know, America's script goes left to right, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, like that. But Latin, true Latin, goes backwards, right? And in the front row, you will have F, E. You dig what I'm talking? It'll be A, B, C, D, E, F, but backwards. You dig what I'm talking about? And that's the Latin script. Salute to the gang, man. All praises to the Most High Creator, man. Let's get back to some of this cooking. You dig what I'm saying? Because it's the stuff that they not hiding. It's American History Month, right? It's not what they really told us, is it? Let's cook some more.
In preventing the truth from
well, I think that because of being an emergent nation, it was necessary to have a kind of creation myth, really. And I think that they were able to create one, really. I think that there's a very different thing if you look at what happened in Australia, whereas Australia and New South Wales in Botany Bay was set up as deliberately, they were designated penal colonies. And so anybody who went there actually, and who's descended from it, they know they're descended from convicts. And actually in Australia, it's worn as a kind of badge of honor, because actually quite a lot of these convicts were, of course, just petty thieves and so on, and horse thieves and general ne'er-do-wells and riffraff.
And political dissidents.
But that's the point, exactly, because quite a lot of them were political dissidents. And so, of course, particularly, Irish nationalists and so on, who were rounded up and sent there in large numbers. And of course, for them, the fact that they'd been transported for their political views, of course, was like a badge of honor. But in America, it was much more amorphous. This is a much more heterogeneous thing, and it happened in a totally different way. That none of these new plantations, even though they were all about making money, it wasn't about getting rid of undesirables, although that was a large part of it. It was a money-making machine. And so what one had to do was to actually organize so many different groups of people, of political dissidents, religious dissidents, political refugees, and all sorts of people, and people who went of their own free will and then find themselves caught up in basically in labor camps and so on, that it was so much more amorphous. And out of it was born an idea of freedom, even at the time when the vast majority of workers, of the workforce in America, were actually used as a slave labor force. But yet Americans themselves, as it went on, they wanted to create a sense of this being separate from and different from the yoke of Britain, the English colonial system. And so a whole new view was plastered over the top of what was going on in a way in which it couldn't have been done in Australia.
One of the keys, one of the problems from our point of view, of course, was how do you understand the relationship between black slavery and white slavery? And we're still grappling with that. You have to read the book to see how. But one begat the other. Some black historians now agree that the basis, the structures of black slavery, enslavement, were built first around whites. In fact, white and black for decade after decade, lived and worked and died and struggled and ran away together.
Dodge the hijack with all this black talk. Dodge the hijack with all this black talk. Black later becomes synonymous with slavery, but black ain't got nothing to do with skin color. Just like white ain't got nothing to do with skin color. It's a social status, right? And this is the tricky part, because they could be saying, first of all, white denotes Christian and European, not anything about skin color, right? So anybody who was descendable could hold a slave, irregardless of their skin tone or where they was born. Their nationality could be white. So what I'm explaining to you is, in the system of indenture, the American Indian or the Aboriginal of America, irregardless to what you've been told commonly, would have been by the system seen as white. Why? Because he can't be enslaved on his own land legally. This is why, if you can show, this is why, first of all, it was important to try to link the status of the child to the status of the mother. That was the diabolical part, right? That had never been done in all slavery, right? That was the diabolical part, that the child followed the condition of the mother, right? So your daddy could be free in a sense. You dig what I'm talking about? But if your mother was indentured, enslaved, you dig what I'm talking about? You could still be owned. Well, first of all, you, the child, would have been the same status as your mother, indentured, enslaved. And the child born during that, even though born to a free man, is property of the master. That's the dirty trick. That's that part of that American history they're not telling you about. Why was it important to make it through the mother in the Americas? Because in the Americas, we had a dominant matrilineal system. The descent came down through the mother, right? That's still practiced even by the fake Indian. You dig what I'm saying? So, let's get back to it, though. Let's get to cooking. Let them cook. Let them cook.
We got the other. Some black historians now agree that the basis, the structures of black slavery, enslavement were.
So what I'm saying with this black thing is, black people could be, for real, Europeans. Black people could be Africans. Black people could be Asians. Black people could be East Indians, right? Black denotes a state of slavery or a position of nothingness, especially in law. It means like dead or non-existent, or also it goes, the etymology of the word black goes back to the word pale, right? So seeing that we got slavery started in the pale states with pale people, and then that slavery term, black, which denotes white, gets applied to anybody who's a slave, well, then it starts to make sense why they tie black and slave together. And then why they also want to move you away from your American identity, heritage, and culture and put a black one on you, because through that lens, I can put you anywhere in the world. Anywhere but here. See the trick? This is what they don't want you to do. They don't want you to ever think. Don't ever listen, man. One thing you did what I'm talking about, and I'm not pointing no fingers or nothing like that, but don't ever trust nobody who tells you to burn all the books. Burn all the books. This is how they were allowed to further Christianity, by hiding, ducking, and burning information. But that loss of wealth of information set people back for generations. Right? This, Owaspi explains to us the nature of an arc cycle. It's a rise and a fall, and towards the end of them, they always tend to burn their libraries. Huh? Did you see that in between the 1450s and 1850s? Yes, you did. And even further, great fires. Hiding. They even burned down the patent system. What patent system? Right? In the 1740s, 50s over here. I thought we were supposed to be some uneducated slave monkeys from Africa. How do we have a patent system in our own language here in America while you're still slaves and indentures? Why? Because we'll beat your feet. The story is not all what it's cracked up to be, y'all. Let's go. Let the man tell you again.
Built first around whites. In fact, white and black for decade after decade lived and worked and died and struggled and ran away together. This is something which could not be afforded by the plantation class, by the big planters. And after a big rebellion in the 1670s, they, I think...
A big rebellion in the 1670s? Are you talking about Bacon's rebellion? Funny, in the 1670s, right? There are no white people anywhere in the world. Not one. Not one. Nobody is being called white. Nobody. It's not till after this revolt in Bacon's rebellion till we get a class system, a social construct in 1681 called white. So, denoting European and Christian, and has nothing to do with actual biology or any real person based in reality. So, in a sense, there is no white race.
A deliberate policy of divide and rule developed. And thereafter, white servants were told that they weren't really the same as black servants. Blacks were slaves and whites were servants. In fact, the black position was worsened considerably, horribly. The white position wasn't worsened, but it was supposedly improved, but it was only marginally. They were still chattels, they were still used, and this was, and they could still be bought and sold. You can see it in wills, which will the planter's possessions to his sons, etc., and they may include 10 Negro slaves, 10 white servants, etc., along with the horses and the chattels, etc.
See how do y'all notice how the name keeps switching up? Black, Negro, slave, white, Indian. Watch this. They're going to come with another one. Free people of color. Then they're going to have colored. Who are they switching up all these many times? What people are you hiding that are taking this name? Has there been anybody, let's just say in the 1900s, right, who had 3 names they were called? Were you ever called a colored, a Negro, a black, and an African American in the 1900s? Just alone in the 1900s. You ought to feel what I'm talking about. If you and your people in the 1900s. I ain't talking about no thousand trillion years ago. I'm talking about the 1900s. If you were called colored, black, Negro, or African American, or all four during the 1900s, then you need to pay attention. Because where did you come from, in America, if you not from this white slave stock? It's only two people left. The Indian, right? Remember, the native ain't created yet. The Indian and the free person of color. It's only two people left. Come to find out, they're both the same people. It's just another title that they're hiding under. Because true, in fact, you are not, in fact, Indians. Indios of God, yes. You dig what I'm talking about? But you just as much Indian as you are black. You're not that just because white folks called you it. What were you before white folks called you Negro and black and Indian? You had been aboriginal to America. They called you Huron. They called you Siouan. They called you Huchika. They called you Aliatis, misnomered as Mayans. They called you Yoruban, misnomered as Aztec. They called you Atua, misnomered today as Incan. They called you Egoquim, misnomered as Algonquin. Yeah. They called you the mound builder, the great sheep. They called you the megalithic builder, the large copper-colored Negro, the Ahuan. They think Cosmon crazy. The ancestors tell me I'm crazy like a fox, Why you think they called me that? The cloud kicker. I go get that stuff up there and dump it on back down to the earth and make it, make it viable, make it applicable today. Why even learn any of this stuff if it's not going to better what you got going on today? You might as well stop wasting your time. If you're not going to apply the truth. But first of all, you got to know it. Anakwakaiki, The cloud kicker, boy. We going to stomp all this down to the earth and make it make sense. What the hell you learning it for if you don't understand it? How you going to apply it if you can't comprehend it? That stuff in America, they hid. Some of it, they lied about it. But some of it, they just straight never even told you. So when you come across it, of course, the first thing you're going to feel is cognitive dissonance. I never heard of that. I thought it was us in 1619. No. What the old gospel song say? No, 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 no. No, nigga. It wasn't you. They call it white slavery, but somehow slavery turns into indenturement. I think it's the same thing. The scholar just proved it's absolutely the same thing. Absolutely the same thing. Said they sign their lives away. Not even knowing. Let's cook.
It ended with it ended in with the War of Independence, and a couple of days into the War of Independence, there was an advert in the Virginia Gazette.
The realist, I see you. Hit the link.
Trolling through the Virginia Gazette. It was an advert, well, many adverts for runaways. This is one of the great insights into black slavery, black enslavement. The number of runaway notices saying his name is whatever, he looks like this, he's got marks of whipping on his back. Please, there's £5 reward if you return to the master, etc. Well, many of these went out for white servants as well. On this day in April 77, I'm not quite sure which it was, 1775, which was a couple of days after the first fighting began, which launched the American War of Independence. 10 ads appeared in the Virginia Gazette for runaways. 2 were for black runaways, 8 were for white runaways.
What? Listen.
Notices for white runaways.
Negro runaways. Hold on. Here go your blacks.
And he was still.
Hold on. Here go your blacks that you're looking for. Your enslaved blacks. The man said, after the war, there were 10 ads put in the paper about runaway slave. 10, right? Of the 10, 2 of them was about so-called Negroes. Huh? The rest of them was pale-faced Europeans, but I'm gonna add on that it was the pale-faced European, and because of his status, was being called Negro and slave. It had nothing to do with skin color. Remember, they're enslaved already. Can't have nothing to do with skin color. Who own them? White and black people, quote unquote. If you had the bread, right? And remember, with many quote unquote, well, the home and the plantation is different. But with many plantations came workers, right? Through, right? 1 second, y'all. 1 second. I'm going to just let dog cook real quick.
77, I'm not quite sure which it was, 1775, which was a couple of days after the first fighting began, which launched the American War of Independence. 10 ads appeared in the Virginia Gazette for runaways. 2 were for black runaways, 8 were for white runaways. 2 of those notices for white runaways were put in by a planter called George Washington. And he was still looking for them after the war.
Amazing, yeah.
The one great thing about investigating history, which marks it out from investigating contemporary events, is that you don't have to worry about libel.
But I suppose to explain, I mean, one thing that we haven't said, for those of you who haven't don't know the basis of how the early American successful colonies worked was it was through the Virginia Company, which was one of these brand new things called the Joint Stock Company. And this was the creation of modern capitalism, modern mercantile capitalism as we know it today. And up until then, up until this period, basically merchants basically worked independently or in loose ad hoc collections of people to fund great enterprises and so on. And the idea was of actually coming together in a more formal way and creating these joint stock companies. And the Virginia Company was just one of these new joint stock companies. And they were given the right to people a part of this of the new world. And to do so, they had various big problems. One, of course, was distance, because it was 3,000 miles away. Another one was that in Elizabethan times, they had hoped and had been told that they would find untold wealth in the form of gold and silver, like the Spanish and Portuguese had done further south. And initially, they hoped that they would get rich quick. on this fantastic scheme of just going there and basically finding gold. And all sorts of totally erroneous reports were brought back by various early adventurers about great quantities of gold. And they had this vision of El Dorado in the north. Now, very quickly, when one barrel supposedly of gold was brought back during the days of Walter Raleigh, and when it was actually analyzed and assayed, of course, it was fool's gold. That dreadful thing that we all know from cowboy westerns and so on, and gold rush movies and so on. We all know that. And this had happened then. And so they realized that if they were going to make this work, it was going to have to be through finding cash crops that would work, and that they'd have to really run plantations. And to do that, to make it work, they needed a huge supply of labor, and they needed it preferably to be cheap labor, or even better, free labor. And so that was how basically the idea of getting people to come, either of rounding up people out of the jails and prisons and so on, or sweeping kids off the street, or also, of course, that the great social benefit was that if you would get rid of all the vagabonds and various sort of lowlife that people didn't like. And of course, vagabonds were not just people without a trade, because a vagabond in the late 1500s, early 1600s, was classed as anybody who was like, if you were a traveling minstrel, you were classed as a vagabond. So Shakespeare, in fact, would have been a vagabond at one time, because he was a member of a group of traveling players. Fortunately, he had very rich allies and patrons, and in fact, the interesting thing was that Shakespeare became an investor in the Virginia Company, along with his famous patron, the Earl of Southampton. So they needed this cheap labor force, and the question was how to get it. And they dressed up these ideas of rounding up basically vagrants, petty criminals, and then, of course, all sorts of dissidents and so on. And they would all be shipped off under the pretense that basically they were the ones who were not criminals and who were not criminalized in the system of rounding up vagrants and homeless children and so on. They used a very interesting technique to actually to persuade people to go there. They painted a rosy picture of this great new world. And they were aided and abetted in this by a wonderful thing, because at that time, of course, there was a huge upsurge in religious dissent, and all sorts of new religious groups grew up. Names that we know today, like the Quakers and the Puritans and the Plymouth Brethren and so on. And there was this great millennialism, this idea of finding the new world, and so lots of people wanted to go to find a new world. If only you could cleanse yourself of the horrors and the tainted world that they find themselves in today. And so, of course, they were ripe for the plucking. And the idea was that if they had no money, many of them, and so all they were doing was going to work their passage off over a period of years. But of course, this system was totally abused, and it was totally abused in a very particular way, which maybe you might like to talk about, called the headright system, which is how human beings became commoditized. They were turned into commodities, like chattels, like something that could be bought and sold, like a hog or a cow or a goat or anything else. And they became worth a particular amount of money. And this was simply because, and how they turned in from people who were just going to search a new life for themselves, became commodities. And maybe you'd like to talk about that, Mike.
Well, headrights was introduced in 1619 to encourage settlement. And the idea was the payment of 50 acres of land in Virginia for every soul brought into Virginia, every soul brought in by someone else, or every soul who paid for their own passage. And so people after with money could invest in people. They could pay for half a dozen poor to go to America. They would sign them up as indentured servants, and if it was half a dozen, they'd get half a dozen 50 acres. Several hundred acres. Some brought vast numbers of people, 60, 70, hundreds. I can't remember how, but there was certainly something like 80 groups or 80 individuals who brought in more than 100 people each during a couple of years. And they got vast amounts of land. They also got the labor of these people who signed up to get there. They had the labor of these people for a number of years. It varied between 3 and 11 years. But if the system developed that these people who were claimed to be the riches of Virginia. Planters would say later on, our riches are our servants. They were indeed. They would get these people, they would make money on them by getting more and more acres, which they could sell. The servants themselves, if they disobeyed, if they ran away, their period of servitude would be doubled. Sometimes it would certainly go up. It could go up for every month away. They could be they could serve 10 extra months. So if you're away for a few months, you could serve years and years and years. But most of these people never survived that long anyway. Half of them died within a year. They, as Don said, they became a trade developed. It became very, very profitable to deal in men, and there were all kinds of and women, all kinds and children, all kinds of agents were doing this. And in fact, this so needful was Virginia and Maryland and the rest of America for labor that another market, a criminal market grew up, which Don can talk about.
Well, well, a good sign of people realizing they're on a good thing is that as soon as a market develops, you can be sure that criminals latch onto it, and this is something that one sees throughout history. And the interesting thing is that right at the very beginning, I mean, almost immediately, the first children were rounded up and sent out to work on the plantations in the brave new world. Almost immediately, a kidnapping industry grew up. And of course, a kidnapping industry could only grow up if there was a demand, and there was, because these new plantations, not only in America but also in the Caribbean, to service the new plantations throughout the Caribbean as well, they were a voracious demand for labor, simply because the attrition rate was horrendous. People either were worked to death because since they were only signed up for a specific number of years, anything, to 4, 5, 6, 7 years, or even longer in some cases. If you were a young child, if you were a boy, and some of them were only aged 7 or 8 years old, and you were swept up and taken away, you belonged to your new master until the age of 21. So a long time. And so the criminal underworld realized very quickly there was a market here to service this. And of course, they weren't constrained by any of the needs and desires of the official world. So they started to round up kids off the streets of the seaports of the British Isles, and they had a wonderful name. They were called spirits because they spirited people away. And the spirits, the first recorded spirit was in 1618 in the West Country, and which is very early. If you think, it's right at the very beginning of this whole enterprise. And very quickly it became the first really big scale organized crime syndicates, really is what grew up then, which I think is something which isn't realized, that the idea of organized crime syndicates we think as being something entirely new. It isn't. It's something that existed in the early 1700s. And they were able to exist like crime syndicates do all over the world with the connivance of the authorities. And they had all sorts of people from local beadles and constables and magistrates, and all sorts of people were in cahoots with them to round people up and flog them off to go and work as slave labor in the colonies. So this is one of the fascinating things. And very quickly you see how this, and it became a huge cause célèbre. When you read the newspapers, the news sheets of the flyers of the 1600s, you see that it became one of these sort of like urban myths. I mean, it was a shocking thing, and there were endless reports about how, and in fact there were cases where people got so worried about being spirited away that in fact there were cases where in the West Country in England where word was get around that spirits were in the district, and all the young women or men of the village at the time, they would actually run away.
They hid in the forest, or
yeah.
There was a parallel with paedophilia, with the fear of paedophilia.
Yeah. Except this was in a huge level, and of course went on for a long time, and then of course laws were quickly passed against all of this. And the kind of people who were preyed upon were the gullible, the weak, the young. So it was young children right through into men and women in their early mid-20s, really, and these people were either just shanghaied, like you think of straightforward violent kidnapping, or they could be inveigled on board ships. Come and see around my ship. And the next thing they know is the ship has taken sail and they're on it. And that happened a great deal. And in fact, stories like that were the basis for a great deal of stories that you get in literature. If you look at Robert Louis Stevenson's famous book, Kidnapped, the story about how Davy Balfour, the hero of Kidnap, is inveigled on board this bark at anchor just to come and see around it, and the way this young boy is. And the next thing he knows is the ship sets sail and they're bound for Carolina. And that was, and like so many things that writers use, of course, this is based on absolute fact. And there were so many cases of this happening to people. And people were, they were, plied with alcohol, spirited away, they were knocked over the head. They were persuaded that they were signing up for, for a great world where they'd be given land and all the rest, of course, and just duped into this. And sometimes it was much more violent.
They used to get, I think, a man who ran the biggest gang of conspirators in London worked from St. Paul's, and he got, I think it was 40 shillings per head from the American agent for everyone he picked up. And his followers would gather around him in St. Paul's, and they'd be told, right, what we need today is a 6'2" fellow who knows about farming. So they'd go and look, etc., bring him back, get 40 shillings. And apparently this guy allegedly handled about 700 or 800 a year, according to another estimate by, which we don't believe, nobody believes, but it must show something. And this was by an anti-slaver, a cleric. He reckoned that in 1680, the numbers being spirited away were 10,000 a year. I can't believe that, but I'm sure that it was a huge number. Nobody can know, of course, how many were spirited away. How can you bloody well tell?
No crime statistics in the 17th century.
One of the great things about the Virginia Company being a company for us investigative journalists is that, of course, it kept minutes. It kept voluminous records, and in those records, and it still escapes me how many historians haven't read them, you've got the details of the fiddles, of the governors who were selling people on their own account, the governors in Virginia. You've got details of how a man who was running the Virginia Company, a man who was still hailed as a great defender of democracy because he took on James I, and he also introduced an assembly in Virginia. This man is called Edwin Sands. Is lauded, but it was Edwin Sands behind the capture and sale of children. It was Edwin Sands who, when James I wanted 100 youths who he didn't like, who had been making a nuisance of themselves around one of his palaces, when he wanted them deported and forced the Virginia Company to do so, it was Edwin Sands who said, "Oh, I'll take some of them on my plantation." You get this from the minutes. You get amazing stuff about people who historians say are terrific, and they're not.
And one of the fascinating things about that is to see why, when we just said, that this actually became systematized and actually part of how the colonies were actually peopled and how labor was collected, was that, just like Mike quoted sources on the American side, in England you see all sorts of memoirs and private letters and so on, and you learn that, for example, by 1647, 1649, a man called William Bullock, who had settled in Virginia and also in Barbados, he wrote a book about the new colony of Virginia and what it was like. And he actually said in the book that actually the normal way of getting labor was actually you went to the spirits. And then we read also letters from a plantation owner later on in the 1660s in Barbados. He comes to England to buy servants from the spirits, and he laments the fact that, in fact, there's somebody else, that, in fact, that the market has dried up temporarily, and he's incredibly miffed. And so you see actually that there is a pattern here, and that it's an accepted way of actually buying your labor force. And that the criminality became, and we also know that it was sanctioned officially. How do we know that? Well, we know that because there were various laws passed about kidnapping, specifically to outlaw kidnapping people for the new colonies. And the first one was passed in 1645. It made no difference. Various edicts and laws were taken that all ships that were leaving for the colonies had to be searched to see whether any children on board who were not there of their own free will or without a letter of permission from their parents or guardians. This, of course, was not enforced. It was for a little bit in Bristol, which was the only port that took it seriously. And then again in 1670, another law was passed that actually said that kidnapping children to send them to new colonies was a capital offence, punishable by hanging. And we can see how effective that was simply because you see what actually happened when kidnappers, when spirits came up before the courts, when they actually came to trial. One great example in the mid 1600s was two kidnappers, husband and wife, came up before the court in London for kidnapping and sending off, without her parents' permission, a 16-year-old girl. So it's now it's been a capital offence for 12 years at this stage. This is 1682, I think it is. And so what great penalty is meted out to them? They were fined 14 pence. They would have got anything up to 20 pounds, by the way, for selling that girl, by the way, and they were fined 14 pence. So what you see is the courts not meting out the penalties and the whole thing actually being part of a whole system throughout the society at that time.
Oddly, it's one of the villains of history is a hero in this. One of the great villains of history is Judge Jeffreys, the bloody assize, the man who executed hundreds after the rebellion against James II by the Duke of Monmouth. The bloody assize swept through the West Country. As he was sweeping through the West Country, he heard, Judge Jeffreys, that the mayor of Bristol and the rest of the magistrates there were in cahoots with the spiriters, and they were conning people into pleading guilty to crimes which would get them transported. And if they didn't plead guilty, said the local judges to these malefactors, you're going to hang. And of course, they all pleaded guilty. They were sent off there and they were sold, and the locals made a lot of money. Judge Jeffreys heard about this. He was outraged. Amazingly, he brought the mayor into court and said he was going to have him. He was going to do terrible things to him. He began by fining him £1,000, which is a hell of a lot of money then. But then he was going to do much more. Alas, Judge Jeffreys fell. And James II fell, that's a Catholic, I say alas, fell a few months later, and he was never able to right this wrong. And so the good Bristol Protestants went on taking we Catholics away.
Was there a way in which they determined the value of convicts and slaves?
Well, it was laid down when in 1718. The government decided it wanted to make it a bigger business, sending convicts out to America, and so it subsidized them. And it said, well, we will pay every trader so much money per head. And the money paid originally, a trader put in a very small bid, well, a very healthy bid, £3 a head. He upped it to £6 later on. He wanted to get the trade. He got it all. So he got £6 a head. Is that the price? No, because it's what he could get for it in the States. Sorry, in America. No, it wasn't laid down, but that ensured he got that £6 and he'd make a profit, whoever he took there. And they would normally sell children for £7 or £8, women for about £9, and skilled people for anything from £15 upwards. So we found in what is an amazing resource, if everybody wants to look at what was happening in the over a 200 or 300 year period, look at the website of the Old Bailey. It's amazing. It's got all the transcripts, transcript after transcript of trials. It's astonishing stuff. And in this, one of the end of our story is a plot to continue sending convicts to America. America has got independence. The English don't know what to do with their convicts because they can't send them to America anymore. So they've got 1,000 convicts a year. They've built up a great well of convicts on ships, in hulks in the Thames, and they're filthy and they're full of disease and people are breaking out of them, etc. What can we do? Says the English king and the English administration. Well, smuggle them into America. So they decide they're going to smuggle them into America. They're going to con the Americans into believing these convicts are really ordinary poor immigrants. Well, they think they can get rid of it. And it goes ahead, this story. And it's in investigating this story, of course, it doesn't succeed in the end, as Chipman gets through. In investigating this, we found one guy who'd been sent, one convict, to America in this shipment. he'd been sold, and he by a whole series of mishaps had returned to England and was going to be hanged because it was a capital offence to come back for transportation before your time. So this guy was going to be hanged. He told his story in court, and it's in the transcripts. And he said that he was sold for £60, which was a fortune. Anyway,
what was his skill?
I don't know. He didn't tell what his skill was. He just said, "I'm sorry, I
that's
just
a very
want to
good
come
point,
back."
because the price not only depended on how much did it cost to actually send the person, and that remained more or less steady around about £6 or so by the time you gave somebody a few grits to eat, and you kept them and looked after them and put them on the ship and paid the passage to get them there. So that was about £6, and then you looked for your profit on top of that. And very soon the price then rose once they had crossed the Atlantic to about sort of £20 or so. And so, in fact, it's a very good question, is that the price, because the price actually then tells you an awful lot about also how there was a con in all of this. There's a widespread view that basically by people who decided to sign up as indentured servants of their own volition, and then basically worked for plantation owners or factory owners in the colonies, that this was just a straightforward financial transaction. And basically, you pay for me, I haven't got any money, you pay for me to go across the Atlantic, and then I work for you for X number of years to pay off the passage. But when you look at the economics of it, you see that this is actually not really the case at all. And we're able to work that out because of some fantastic contemporary documents. One in particular is a remarkable piece of work by a man called Richard Lygon. And Lygon was a royalist in England, and during the civil wars, he'd backed the wrong side, obviously, and he lost his lands and his money, and he decided that he'd go to Barbados and chance his luck at setting up. And because when he went there, he was very well received by all the major landowners and planters and so on, and was received at the finest houses of the greatest planters of the day, who were already making astonishing amounts of money. And Lygon did the remarkable thing. He then came back to England, and he wrote his account of this trip, a true and accurate account of the island of Barbados, as I think it's called, published in 1659. And this book is one of the world's first business self-help manuals. Today, if you go into any shop, any bookshop, they're absolutely just stuffed in the business department of how to do it. You know, how to be a tycoon, how to become a billionaire, etc., etc., etc. Well, Lygon wrote one of the first books of this in the middle of the 1600s, and he described not only his incredible adventures about going to Barbados and coming back again, but he also described what you had to do to set up as a sugar planter, and he described in minute detail all the costs, from how much it costs to buy your farm, etc., right through to all your labor costs and everything else. And at the time he wrote, of course, conditions in Barbados were truly horrendous. If they were bad in Virginia, they were a lot worse, because there was no attempt, like in America, not only the Virginia company saw it all as a money-making exploit, that's what it was, pure and simple, but also there was a feeling about this idea of this new idea of colonies and empire, and the idea of empire was really taking a root there. But in the islands where they had the sugar farms and the sugar factories, it was basically just slave labor. What it was all about there was purely making money as fast as you could, and nobody cared about the attrition rate of the labor force or anything like that at all. So when Lygon described all of this, he went through minute detail of how much it cost, you see, to run your sugar plantation, including the costs of buying your workforce, and also because of the figures he had of the annual gross and net profit levels that he worked out from one of his conversations with these grandees, like people like James Drax, one of the richest men at that time in the world, because of his sugar plantations. And he worked this out. And from that, you see that if somebody, because they wanted to start a brave new world, life in a brave new world, and for the want of £6 for their passage, because an agricultural labourer's wage at that time in Britain was about 12, 15 pounds an annum. So no way could they have that. If you're a skilled labourer, you could earn 20, 25, 30 pounds a year, depending on what you did and where you lived. So it was also very difficult for people to raise that money.
He do look like Graham Hancock, don't he?
Sign up for indenture, and it was for 5 years minimum.
Do y'all hear this man, though? I just wanted to let him cook for a minute. You dig what I'm saying? Not say nothing. You dig what I'm saying? Let y'all just, go ahead. If you got to turn it up a little bit, adjust your volume. You dig what I'm saying? But bro is going nuts. Listen, he tripping. Shout out salute my brother, man. Malachi Maccabee, the Megaton light bomb. You dig what I'm saying? Yeah, man, we gonna bring that American history that they don't want to tell you about. Because, see, this is the real history. This is the real stuff. That it wasn't you enslaved. That actually, more likely, you owned a slave or an indenture than ever was one. See, the reason they don't want to tell you is, or you did what I'm saying, or for the fact that you was even on the plantation. The only reason you was ever even on the plantation is because you owned it. How can you put a person in peonage, right, if you can't tie him to the land? Why is it that I'm listen, I done seen and did enough genealogies, and I'm saying I'm willing to bet. I'm so sure of this. I'm willing to bet that if not your mother and father have land, I'm willing to bet within 2 to 3 you find genealogy lines of your grandparents to your great grandparents to your great great grandparents, right? That in that line you find multiple people in your family with massive amounts of acres of land and a farm, and you dig what I'm saying, life insurance policies and insurance, and they're doing business, planters, farmers, I'm guaranteeing it. How? Mind you, many of your third great grandfathers and them was just being born in the late 1800s. You dig what I'm saying? Wasn't that long ago. But the problem is with the narrative they're telling us that you are somehow supposed to be this slave. Well, if I'm a slave, how do I own this farm with this 600 acres? Right? How am I a head of a household? Wait a minute. You're not even supposed to be counting slaves. How did I even get on a census docket? Always like to ask the historians, what happened to the free people of color after 1790? Who did they turn into, and who are they today? And then you start to smell wood burning. Instantly, their hair start catching on fire. Who are the descendants of the free people of color today? They're not called Native Americans. Wasn't no Native American in the Constitution. Wasn't no Native Americans in 1790. Who are the descendants? Who are the descendants of this nigga on this snag? Who are the descendants of the free people of color from the 1790 census today. And what are they called? Yeah. We gonna get into some more of this American history. Not the stuff that they told us, though. We gonna get into some more, right? Because we gonna break down where these natives came from. And when, most importantly, when the mass majority of them came here. Because clearly the Asian Siberian genetic is not indigenous to America. It's indigenous to Siberia. So a African, even after 200,000 years in America, never turns into an American. If he keeps breathing, with Africans, he never, ever turns into an American. The same thing applies to an Asian, to a European, to whoever. To be an American, in fact, you must be born here, and your ancestors come from here. All right? Do we have a similar genetic past? Of course we do. Owaspi explains that, man, that's so old. That we not even them same people no more. We have we not even, in a sense, anatomically we are the same in a sense, but genetically we're different. We just half of what they were. They gave us half of that overall makeup of what the modern man is. And modern man is great physicality, right? At the same time, with the ability of great spirituality. That is Cosmon in a sense. That is the balance, right? The ability to have great spiritual strength and great physical strength all at the same time. Say Cosmon only happens once on the time of a planet when it's inhabitable, right? It's a time, but every planet go through this. But anyways, so this is why a lot of that stuff is just coming out. Ain't nothing you can do about it to stop it. You know what I mean? Just jump on and ride the wave. You dig what I'm talking about? Enjoy all this stuff coming out. You dig what I'm saying? But be careful too, because now they got AI deep fakes, all this stuff. You dig what I'm saying? But you dig what I'm saying? Always keep your spiritual glasses on. You dig what I'm talking about? Your Ethereum goggles when you're down here in ooze, man, and you'll be all right, man. Keep Jaja in your headlights and in your rear view. You dig what I'm saying? You will be good, all right? Because even in the best of lies, there's always a line of truth. There's always a line of light in it. In the best of lies, that's why they the best lie, because they got some truth in it. If you can find that line of light even in the lie, you can always trace back to Jaja, but you're gonna be understanding and breaking down. And this is why I call Owaspi the great decoder. Because everything got a little, if it's not just a flat lie or they hiding it, it's got a little slant on it. Everything is not just a bald-faced lie. Right? Because people, they swing to extremities. You dig what I'm talking about? They found out that slavery wasn't exactly how they got told it. So now all slavery is fake. All of it. No. Right? Some people were enslaved. right? Unfortunately, many of our people did get caught up in the system, huh? But even at that time, the system had been changed and had been begun to be a penalized type thing where they kept slavery alive through penalizing a person through law or color of law, right? This is what the 13th and 14th Amendment allowed to keep going on, the institution of slavery if a person caught a charge. This is what they're not telling you about. But they'll give you some black codes, though. Happy American History Month, y'all. Let's keep cooking.
According to Ligon's amazing figures, the profit that each laborer made for their employer was, believe it or not, you paid off your £6 in 38 days. Sounds impossible, but true. Within a year, each laborer made for their master just under £58 profit per annum. So this idea that they then had to work for maybe 5, 6, 7 years or longer, of course, is preposterous. Because, of course, it wasn't just a straightforward economic contract. And, of course, these people, of course, had no way of working this out for themselves. So they were being conned here. And that's really what was happening with the indentured services. They were conned as to all these numbers of years that they had to work to pay off this passage. In fact,
They were conned. Yeah. Yeah. They slick with that old con, huh? They like to throw it on Cosmon, right? Oh, you con man. Yeah, okay. But why I stay exposing stuff? If I'm the con man, why am I always exposing the ruse? You can call me what you want, but you can't prove it. You got to remember, Jaja made us this way for a reason, man. Some of us built to go through it because we got to get this light out, man. We know what it is with our people. Huh? We need to know this stuff. And everybody don't know it. And we got to stop acting like we the smartest people all of that. I know everything. And ooh, there's people who had never heard this. What about them? They less important than you? No. Right? So sometimes we got to get out our own way. Right? And this is why we investigate on white slavery. Let's get out our own way. Because they thought they was beating us. We thought Kunta Kinte was real. By the way, Kunta Kinte is a Choctaw name or a Shatta name. It means he who speaks to the beaver. Oh, my bad. He who wears the beaver hat. My bad. Yeah. Kunta Kinte. Look it up. Choctaw Dictionary.
They teared it off incredibly quickly. And once you were there, that was it. You couldn't get out. There's one source which is terrific. It's called Thomas Burton's Parliamentary Diary, and it covered the Cromwellian period. When the Stuarts came back to power, they tried to get rid of all the records of the Cromwellian period, all the parliamentary records. But Thomas Burton's diary survives, and it's somewhere in the British Library, and it describes how in 1653. A group of 70 or 80 cavaliers, suspected cavaliers, were shipped out and sold in Barbados. And they were probably, some of them were certainly innocent. They weren't involved in an uprising, but the local Roundheads wanted to get rid of them and make money, because two of Cromwell's closest aides in the House of Commons, Puritans, they organized this trade. They made money out of the trade. And two of these these chaps who've been sold, they managed to get back to England. They escaped and they arrived in Parliament with a petition. This is at a time when England was still riven with fury over between Roundheads and Cavaliers, and you can tell from the diary the hatred which still persisted. But even so, the Puritan MPs were outraged, some of them, at what they learned their colleagues had been doing, selling freeborn Englishmen like that, and they roared and they raved, but it was suppressed. They one of the guys who took the lead in demanding action had been a signatory to the execution of Charles I. A couple of years later, and he demanded action. He demanded these Cavaliers who he hated be freed. They weren't. And a couple of years later, Cromwell died, and then a couple of years after that, the Stuarts were restored. The man who demanded the freedom of these Puritan prisoners, he was executed because he'd signed the death warrant of Charles I. As for the Cavaliers, they were left in Barbados for years because a genuine sale had taken place, and their owners wouldn't let them come back to England. I don't know, just okay. So that's helplessness, if you like.
Are you guys ready for some questions? We can open the floor for questions. I'd be grateful if you could wait for a microphone to come to you. And we'll ask our questions of Don Jordan and Mike Walt. Go ahead. Yeah.
I've got two questions. The first relates to this legal code in operation in Jamestown in the early days, which you say would be the envy of the Taliban, and people could be executed for not going to church. As far as I know, I may be wrong, but I don't think people were being executed in England at that time for not going to church. Could you comment on that? And would you like the second question now or afterwards?
I think the first one's destroyed me, but okay. The first question: I don't believe people were being executed in England for not going to church. And Dale's Law, which is what Dale's Code, which is what you're referring to, it was indeed the most ferocious set of laws that, and a set of laws that England certainly didn't operate in England. Did I understand your question correctly?
I think so. And these people were presumably Protestants.
Yes, they all would have been Protestants indeed. I mean, you were executed as a Catholic priest, but you weren't. No non-Protestants were allowed in Virginia at the time.
Okay.
Y'all see that? The understanding of the spiritual play behind the separation of the Catholic to the Protestant Lutheran understandings is played out behind the scenes spiritually. Oahspe breaks that down, right? In the book of S, you dig what I'm talking about? The play between or loss of power from the false god Christ and the creation of these little lesser Christs, the Protestant Christ, the Lutheran Christ, the Universalist Christ, the Baptist Christ, the African Methodist Christ, the Methodist Christ, the Mormon Christ, you get what I'm saying, right? And yes, Eric Hamlin, he did just say they owners wouldn't let them come back to England, right? Remember, the whole thing is to get them to work over here, produce the land, send the money back, send the product back, send the tobacco back, send the indigo, whatever you's growing, send it back because the land is what's profitable. And by doing that for a certain amount of years, you were supposed to be able to work it off, get you a plot, and then continue working for the system, right? In a sense. Because if you're going to start farming, well, who you going to sell it to? Besides what you eat, you want to make some money off what you grow. Right? This is the birth of your head right system. I can't even make it up this good. I can't even make it up this good. Huh? I can't make it up this good. Let's keep cooking. He asked a good question.
I'm very interested in the nature of the research that you did for this book, because I've been doing similar research over the past 3 years in relation to 2 Caribbean colonies.
He asked him about the nature of the research. You dig what I'm talking about, that he did to be able to bring out this book, because they end up writing a book, right? Called it was Slavery and They Were White, or something like that. I forget the exact name of it. It was They Were White and it was Slavery and They Were White, or something like that, right? That break down that true history of who was really enslaved here, how an indenture becomes a slave, how somehow an Indian becomes a Negro, a person of color, a black, to hence an African American. Right? When we see these same people just being flip-flopped and put in different social constructs to minimize their political power, in a sense, in the Americas, period. Proving that it already had to be a system running. You know? But you know, we could go a little bit more. I just wanted to share that, right? But he do ask a good question. What was the nature of how you come across this? What's up? He asked me basically. See what he said.
I haven't read the whole of the book yet, but I get the impression that the vast majority of the references in your notes are to published books, printed books, some of which were contemporary, but some of which were much later. And where you do use stuff at the National Archives at Kew, often you refer to the Calendar of State Papers, which are printed summaries written by civil servants and expurgated in some cases, rather than the original documents. And there must be a vast quantity of original documents in terms of correspondence from the colonies to the Lords of Trade and Plantations, and you don't seem, I get the impression, viewed very much of this material.
No, it's true. We didn't alas, spend as much time as we would have liked at Kew. I mean, we could and would, if we'd have had the opportunity, have spent another year researching this. Alas, we couldn't. Our publisher wouldn't allow us to do that. I know our publisher also said 100,000 words. We wanted to write twice as much, because we certainly had enough material, but we didn't have enough time to, alas, it's no good excuse, but I'm afraid that's the truth. We didn't have enough time to get to sources. We wanted to.
Right over there.
Now, do we know what happened to some of the indentured servants after they finished their period? Did any of them ever get what they thought they were going to get in the end? Are there any, I hesitate to call them success stories, but are there any stories of people who did, work it through and eventually get a small parcel of land or something?
Well, there were indeed. In fact, there were some notable cases of this. That, in fact, some notable families are descended from these early workers. Jimmy Carter's family, for example, and so some did. But one has to say that they are the minority. Even those who survived their indenture period, and one's looking at very severe working conditions, and even those who survived were quite often conned out of the things that were promised to them. You see, people were promised as part of the sweetener, because there was a huge advertising campaign went on in England to get people to go, and they were promised what were called freedom dues, and this could be anything from a sum of money to a plot of land to
listen up,
livestock and a bag of meal or whatever to set you up as a farmer, right? But quite often, when they had finished their period, that they discovered that somehow or other the freedom dues had evaporated. Right? And also sometimes actually it was even worse than that, because if you take Barbados, for example, people were promised, of course, that they could get their plot of land in Barbados. The only thing is that by the mid-1600s, the large plantation owners had bought up every last single scrap of land that you could plant anything on in Barbados. So when the worker finally got their freedom, they were forced with, they had two options. One, if they had any money, which they usually didn't, of course, they could pay for a passage to another island and try to start again somewhere else, or they would have to sell their labor back to the very people who they'd been working for as free slave labor for all those years. And of course,
Boom. Did you hear what he just said?
Of the labor market, of course, at a
He just told me. Watch this. Watch this.
For all those pay for a pass 1500s. The first, but even those who survived were quite often conned out of the things that were promised to them. You see, people were promised as part of the sweetener, because there was a huge advertising campaign went on in England to get people to go. And they were promised what were called freedom dues. And this could be anything from a sum of money to a plot of land to some livestock and a bag of meal or whatever to set you up as a farmer. Right? But quite often when they had finished their period, that they discovered that somehow or other the freedom dues had evaporated. Right? And also sometimes actually it was even worse than that, because if you take Barbados, for example, people were promised, of course, that they could get their plot of land in Barbados. The only thing is that by the mid-1600s, the large plantation owners had bought up every last single scrap of land that you could plant anything on in Barbados. So when the worker finally got their freedom, they were forced with, they had two options. One, if they had any money, which they usually didn't, of course, they could pay for a passage to another island and try to start again somewhere else, or they would have to sell their labor back to the very people who they'd been working for as free slave labor for all those years. And of course, because of the nature of the control of the labor market, of course, at a hugely reduced and depressed price, of course. So in fact, even for those who survived, things were not really that good. Some did do well, however, and there are some astonishing cases of people who went on. And in fact, there are remarkable cases of people who went on and actually became planters. And actually, they had their own indentured servants, had their own slave labor force. And there are famous cases of that as well.
Including black cases.
Yeah.
The women who began, who were taken up, did they end up being prostitutes there? Or did some of them, in fact, marry
Oh, no.
people who turned out to be black slaves?
They did marry. Yeah. A lot of them did.
We haven't been able to trace many. One we traced was I think the third girl to be picked up in 1618, Elizabeth Abbott. She was shipped out, and we believe she was sold in the spring of 1619, and pick her up 4 years later. Most of the first 300 children died within a very short period. I think only 12 reached the. We're not sure, but the indications are only a dozen ever reached adulthood. There may have been more than that, but that's certainly one assertion, and I believe it. And Elizabeth Abbott was one of the few who did survive. And we find her in 1624, murdered. She had become a servant to a planter whose wife, this planter's wife, was a heroine. In the Indian War, this woman had done the Western thing. She'd held out against she was terrific against the Indian horde. She'd refused to budge, etc. And she was lionized for this. But a couple of years later, she and her husband are accused of killing this girl. So this is, I don't know why I mentioned that, but you can't trace many people. And this is one that we did.
Ralioski.
Yes,
Hey, your boys in them still got some balls around? Shit, I'm probably gonna need a player pack. Probably about probably at least a nice 4-5 people.
Also have comments to make
Okay, I'll give you the heads up. Probably be like in a day or two. You know what I mean? And but I'll give you the heads up. It's like for flavors. My partner coming from the shop, and he looking to shop.
short, but weren't lives.
What you bacon? What you bacon?
And so what
kind of bacon?
Hell yeah, shit. If you got any flicks or anything, you do what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? As long as they stay looking like they've been looking. Dang. What's the tickets on him so I can like tell him so I can whop him and I ain't gonna whop him, but you know, so get a pack of point off that bitch.
This argument has been made in defence of the indentured system, that it was no worse. It's been claimed than in England. Well, this is just not true. In England, well, we don't believe it's true. In England, you could only be signed up for a year. In England,
get them out to go for a powwow.
You weren't. Okay. You might be beaten, and servants were being beaten, and so were wives up till very recently. But you weren't beaten to death. And if you were, it's very unlikely that your beater will get away with it. It did continually in America. You weren't tied to.
Yeah, the other ones was good.
If you fled, you weren't branded. You weren't manacled. You weren't, in other words,
that was deep. That was pretty deep too. And I got another
as Africans were. Not the. I must emphasize that the very worst treatment was meted out too.
I didn't try the dose, or did I?
In other words, lose a limb. Nothing like that.
I think I did. It was like false
awful what did happen to whites. So, as for lessons, or as for what was happening in other parts of the 13 colonies, it varied. Maryland and Pennsylvania, terrible things happened. In New England, terrible things happened, which we've detailed some of them.
Hold on.
I think the worst extremes were in Maryland and Virginia. This is where we concentrate. There's a lot of work we'd like to have done in other parts of the colonies, and we have done some. But much the same attitude to the use of servants as property that prevailed almost throughout the 13 colonies.
Hold on a second. You need the mic.
No, it was just a comment. I was just wondering about the policing system, because you're making a comparison between what happens in England. There's a legal system which is enforced. Presumably there's also a legal system in the 13 colonies. But you're saying that people can get away with it.
Well, you're on the edge of civilization, as it was called, and you are less. It's more easy to get away with things. But also there was a different attitude. A very telling moment was in the mid 17th century when the Virginia House of Burgesses passed a resolution warning planters, and they were planters themselves, that the vicious means they were using to suppress and control their servants were deterring immigrants from coming, and they better stop. They didn't stop. The very fact that it could be announced, it could be people could be encouraged to obey the law, if you like. It made no difference.
I apologize, y'all. Sometimes you gotta handle business.
Controlled by the planters themselves, and they would be very kind to their fellows.
And it was a matter of degree. What happened out on the edge of the known universe, if you like, was very different from what you could get away with at the center. And out on the periphery, they decided to codify their laws about the relationship between masters and servants, and in various ways. And particularly in Barbados in the 1660s, they set up a code. And this code was something that could never have happened in Europe. You couldn't have had this in England. And it codified, for example, throughout all of this period, there was a huge problem of servants always running away. This is an ongoing problem. Now, if things were really good, you wouldn't have had this endless ongoing problem right throughout the 17th century into the 1800s of servants running away and whites and blacks running away together. And so anyway, they decided to have a code in Barbados which shows the level of how this was different from what you had in Europe. And if you ran away, it was decided, if you ran off the plantation, for every 2 days you were absent without leave, if you like, because they had a pass system, which is reminiscent of some other things in history we could think of. And they had a pass system. And if you were absent without leave, as it were, for 2 days, that was 1 extra year's servitude. If a male servant married without permission, 4 years extra servitude. If a servant fathered a child without their permission of their master, 3 years extra servitude. Now, this did not happen with farm workers at home back in England. This is totally different. The whole scale of the way in which they were treated, as well as Mike said, brandings, manaclings, whippings, people had bodkins put through their tongue. I mean, all sorts of terrible things were done to people that would not have been done
legally.
Yeah. And so it was very different. Out there, the gloves were off. At home, there was still the idea, thanks to the Magna Carta, so there's still the idea of the free-born Englishman. But of course, and also you have to remember, a great number of these workers were people who were looked upon with huge disdain and contempt because
I noticed that too. Tabitha. And so that kind of reminds me of a saying that I heard that came out of the mouth of Rockefeller, which was there are going to be people who get a just general education, and then there are going to be people with a liberal education. So we just going to tell people what we want to tell them, make them good subservient workers, not thinkers and bosses. That's what it reminds me of. It's crazy. And look at the questions they asked them, because they stunned. They're stunned in the crowd. They didn't know this either. That's how well this system is hidden. They don't know.
they were quite often Irish. And of course, the Irish Catholics, their masters were almost entirely, of course, were English Puritans. And of course, so they were not only foreigners, but they were also religious enemies, and they were a very long way from home. And also they were part of another system that was going on, which was actually to clear clearances in Ireland to push the Irish out so as the plantation could happen. So for economic and political reasons and religious reasons, they were very badly treated.
Yeah.
Hi. I was just wondering to what extent you thought that the situation of English people being used for servitude had a lot to do with the expropriation of the commons throughout English history.
Absolutely, it's a direct correlation. The enclosures, the loss of land, the pauperization of the English had a direct relationship to the dispatch of what was called the surplus poor into America. Indeed, all the way back to the 16th century, this was being argued. The people behind Raleigh, or rather people not behind Raleigh, the people with Raleigh were arguing this. Hakluyt, the great geographer, he argued that because we were being, England was being, he claimed, overrun by the poor. And why were they being overrun? They're being overrun, if they were being overrun, because the poor were dispossessed and they lost the commons. Indeed, what could you do with them? You got rid of them by sending them into slavery in the New World, or they didn't call it slavery. Very direct.
Well, that is a very
you send them into slavery, into the New World, but you don't call it slavery. What do you call it, folks? Hit me with it in the chat. What's the same word, same thing being done, just a different title? That's right. Indenturement. What you gonna look back into the 1800s? This is what watch this though. You're gonna look back into the 1800s in your own genealogy. You're going to see that your grandfathers owned slaves. But you start to look, right? The master, or the head of household, which was changed later through tax identity, but the master or head of household, right? For the most part, these slaves, quote unquote, are his own family. Look it up. This is what they twist and turn up when they're talking about, the slave took him master last name. No, that was his son. He already had that last name. He was just indentured to his homeboy Relvin that lived around the corner, who taught his son how to make shoes. Right? His last name may have been Jenkins, right? And then over time, a lot of people, to get out of the stigma of indenture, change their names. So a dude who may have learned how to make shoes as a child, the 7 years he was indentured, you dig what I'm talking about? Let's say from 14 to 21, he learned how to make shoes, right? When he go, he don't want to be Robert Jenkins, the indentured slave, no more. He want to be Robert the cobbler, right? Because a cobbler makes shoes. So to shorten that name, they take on the name Cobbs. So now Robert the cobbler becomes Robert Cobbs. You see this in your genealogy over and over and over again. And then you're gonna see, if you pay close attention, especially from the 17 to 1800s, that switch right there, right? And then all through the 1800s, at least up to 1860, 1870, you're going to see your grandparents change from white to mulatto to Negro or color. You dig what I'm talking about? Color. I don't even think they was called. I'm not sure if they was even calling us Negro yet. But by the 1860s, 1870s, you're gonna see these same people, blue black niggas, being called white, being called mulatto, you dig what I'm talking about? And then you see a light skinned nigga, and then they tell you that this gotta be mixed, right? So they call this mulatto when in fact this is a 100% indigenous American, no admixture at all. She just red bone. You see how by what they're calling you in the law and how the law is being applied in the court, by what the status being applied to what you're being called, not what you are, but what you being called. So if they're calling you slave, the law instantly treats you like a slave till you prove you're not. Many of these people coming over here as children, or the children of people who died in indenture, since you was born and while they was indenture, you are indenture too. You just like the mama. See the trick? This is how you can become a slave very quickly, especially at this time. And so the thing we got to understand is indenture servitude, slavery, ain't no difference. Some people it panned out okay for them, and some people it didn't. And then let's not forget the niggas who it didn't pan out for, who went and turned around and took it. You dig what I'm saying? So it's not what they telling us, yo. It's not what they told us. The OGs up here debunking everything.
Very interesting point. Can I just pick up about this? You see, the people who actually ran these schemes, these labor schemes and this colonization scheme and the factories and the plantations and this new mercantile capitalism, they never called any of this slavery, of course. But the interesting thing is, did anybody else? And the answer is yes. contemporaries who were not actually involved in what was going on often did use the word slavery. And so we read in an official report in the 1660s on the nature of life in Barbados, we read in the official report the word slavery is used by the indentured servants in an official government report by an official observer who is sent to actually see what.
But remember who these people from Barbados getting took from where? The Guinea coast of Africa, right? Purportedly. We don't even never talk about the Pacific slave trade. The realest in the
yeah. Peace and love, Cosmon. How are you?
Love, life, balance, Slim. What's going on?
Shoot, I'm cooling. I am cooling. I've been in and out of the conversation, but you know, when I saw the video on your thing, I said, "Oh snap! Yeah, he going into the real shit." All right.
Yeah, we're gonna get into some of this American history they don't never tell us about.
Never.
Right? I had to shout you out at the beginning of this thing because you dig what I'm talking about. Because I had seen this video, or was it the other one? It's another one, or it's either this one or another one.
Yeah, I presented two of them. So it was this one, Investigating White Slavery, and then the other one was They Were White and They Were Slaves. So it was two of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think his dog right here that we looking at ended up writing the book. They were white and they were slaves. That's the name of the book, y'all.
Yeah, no,
they were
these
white and they were
two
slaves.
here are no, hold up, Cosmo, because these two right here are White Cargo. They are the authors of White Cargo. The other guy, Michael Hoffman, is the author of They Were White and They Were Slaves. So two different books, but touching on the same subject ultimately.
Right. Right. There you go. Clean wipe me down. Wipe me down. Let's get this information together.
Yeah, and when I saw this, I found it so profound though, bro, because it's crazy how they would try to predicate the 1619 story around us. But the truth is, they put that story out there to cover up their slavery and what was going on in this country way before the 1619 story was ever a thing.
Fact.
And that's why this was so powerful, because I was like, bro, I can't believe that, I mean, I think the idea of them being indentured servants was the issue. That was the cover up. And people don't get it. And I'm like, oh, they weren't this. I said, listen, they just try to romanticize their idea.
Right. They gave a little dumbed down, cute version of slavery and called it indenturement. You dig what I'm saying? And it was all lily white, and you dig what I'm talking about? Roses and
then it was
flowers.
over years. And no, they were chattel. They were slaves. They were rounded up off the streets of Britain and sent to this country to freaking work and be slaves.
And many of them duped. You did what I'm talking about. They thought they was signing indentures. They was signing themselves into slavery.
Exactly. And how similar does it sound to, like those times after they claimed slavery ended in 1865, and these same quote contracts that were signed, right? When people started going to work and things like that, people signing X's on contracts and shit. It was the same thing. It been was going on. They just put black with slave, Negro with slave, and then they ran with it. And now our people are in a state of victimhood because of this shit. When the truth is, it was these motherfuckers, all those people that's in government, Congress, Senate, all immigrants to this country, don't belong here.
And don't represent us at all.
Their ancestors was from Ireland, Britain, all of these places. Okay. And they know it.
Facts.
And they know it. They don't keep it no secret. That's why they was like, nah, my granddaddy was working in the field. I heard what's his name? Joe Osteen giving a sermon about how his father used to pick cotton.
Did you hear Elon Musk? Elon Musk said they asked him about reparations. He was like, well, everybody was a slave. We've been trying to tell the Pan Boo Boos for a long time. You dig what I'm talking about, bro? You're not gonna get it for that. That's not what happened.
Yep. and they know it, and that's why they've been able to drag us all this time. Oh, they'll put in HR 40 because the Democrats mad at them over there now, so now they want to go back to pushing this HR 40 reparations bullshit. But what they really need to be focusing it on is being prisoners of war,
right,
and crimes against humanity. The organic people to this land are the ones that were usurped.
Right, and the right
Mm-hmm.
and the right status, right, applied to those people comes after. Shout out to my big bro, Alabama, post Laminium, putting the people back into their proper position. You dig what I'm saying? So, but that comes with, first of all, claiming who the hell you are.
Come on,
how they gonna know if you don't make it known? You dig what I'm saying? The thing is, you have excuse me. Go ahead.
So I was saying, bro, it's only because they want to be Africans. They want to be Africans so bad that's what's making it so hard for a lot of this stuff to come about, because we got a hard time with these motherfuckers trying to tell them that your ancestors wasn't slaves. Matter of fact, your ancestors owned people. Your ancestors owned black people and white people. How about that?
Yep. And then for the well, you know what though? I had to learn this the hard way. Stop telling them niggas who they is. You is a slave if you say you is.
Just get the fuck out of the way while we trying to get our shit.
Right. Just get out the way, because soon as this restitution and reparations, all this jump off, oh, they gonna be ending in.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna be Big Al, you gonna be Big Abo, Big Chief, Aboriginal since 05. That's what you think what I'm talking about? They gonna come up with new names.
Come on, since 05.
I'm Algonquin, Cosmo. I remember you was talking about that. Algonquin. Yeah. You dig what I'm talking about? So don't jump on the bandwagon when we start delineating.
Yep.
Don't jump on the bandwagon because we done told you.
We keep trying to tell them. And it's amazing too, because it was so beautiful to come across this, because I was like, I heard people talk about white cargo before, and I know it was times A1 has been trying to explain that these white people were slaves for a long time. I don't know how that wasn't clicking in people's head.
Right.
I don't know how that wasn't clicking, and it made so much sense, because I'm like, wow, like dang, they would make it up. Somebody was like, oh, why would they make that up? Why wouldn't they?
Why wouldn't they?
Why wouldn't they? Think about that. Got you walking around being a victim to something that ain't even the truth. Because I even show so many census records on my channel, like showing slave owners. My folks is on a list of slave owners.
Right? And then you look down in there, all them so-called slaves got your great-great-great-granddaddy last name.
Come on now. Come on now.
And then the trick is, you go look at the root of the etymology of the word slave, and it leads you right back to servant, back to family.
Exactly. And most of the time, that's who people was owning. Family.
That's who you indentured. Who else you gonna indenture except your children? I send my kid, Sharice know how to sew. This is how indenture went. I had 7 kids. I got 5 girls and 2 boys, right? I indenture or list to go to a schooling. This is what indenture was: a schooling, a work situation, what do you call that when you on job training in a sense, right? And you got a skill, sometimes head right lands, and a dollar amount to then go on to set up your own business with the skill you taught them of sewing. So I send 4 of my daughters to you. You dig what I'm talking about? And they are your indentures. They go for 7 years. They come out. They got jobs. They know how to sew and all that stuff. They set up their own little shops. Then they turn around and get indentures, and you did what I'm talking about. They turn around, and that's how the system of employment was working at the time. It was a job. Nobody is gonna send their daughter off to a nigga. They know about to rape them.
That shit was so universal. And that's what I keep telling people. I say, you think all the white people, they was raping us and that's how they got in our families? That's what you think?
No.
I be telling
Your
people,
granddaddy
no.
was nasty. Your granddaddy was nasty. See, you scrubbed her up, cleaned her up with perfume on baby girl from England. You did what I'm talking about. She had a fat little thing on her from eating all them collard greens since she got over here to the plantation.
Exactly.
He hunched on it, and that's your great grandma.
Come on now.
And then guess what? She mixed back in with a nigga Indian too.
Facts. And that's what was going on. And that's what I keep
saying. That's what's happening today. Ain't nothing changed. Ain't nothing changed since the beginning of time. We are all humans. And because of that, you can add mix. And because you can add mix, so are the colors.
Yep.
That's it. Ain't no trick to it. No magic. No nothing. So niggas come in every color.
Facts.
That's what we got to get past. Cause see, we never had this colorism thing in America. Why? Cause I got a grandmama that's high yellow. I got a grandmama that's red with freckles. I got a grandmama that's copper color brown. And I got a grandmama that's blue black. And every one of them niggas.
And then we could even take it even a step further, Cosmon, because I know they love to talk about the Civil War. They love to say, oh, the Civil War was slavery was the cause of that. But people never think about the fact that white people also fought in the Civil War. And if white people fought in the Civil War too, what the fuck is they fighting for us to be free for? If we was these motherfucking slaves, why would they be fighting for us? Unless this shit was a universal thing and they always fighting because of it.
The 12 Years a Slave. Remember the movie 12 Years a Slave?
I know it. Yeah, I know what that movie is. Pissed me off.
Yeah, what they didn't tell you was that's the story of a white man. That story comes out of the abolitionist tales of white people. They showed you a black man in chains. They paid him. With the three little pale skinned African kids, you dig what I'm talking about? They're Africans, but they're pale skins. In the abolitionist book of the 1859 with Rosalita and all these, they show the black people. They tell the stories of the white people, but show the blacks. The abolitionists were advocating not for niggas being free, because niggas primarily owned people. But they were shocked by the amount of pale skinned people enslaved on plantations in the South. So when they came to places like Charleston and all this Negro talk, right? They expected in their minds to see brown skin up there being sold. So when they seen blonde hair, blue eyes, and lily pale white skin being sold by the ton, you dig what I'm talking about? It came as a shock to their morality at that point. It wasn't till that point till they seen it. See, because you got to remember, they had been working to forget their slave roots.
Exactly. Trying to put that shit behind them. But we know what time it is. And like people like Michael Hoffman, I thank God for Michael Hoffman, Don Walsh, and Michael Jordan for this. I mean, Don Jordan and Mike Walsh. Excuse me, y'all. I'm getting their names mixed up. Don Jordan and Mike Walsh. Okay. I thank those two guys right here on this screen, because people always say, well, why ain't no black professors talking about it? Why don't black scholars speak about it? Because black scholars are intertwined with the idea of African slavery, that's where our ancestors came from, and they never had any proof. I'm talking about even in the 50s, they just kept perpetuating the idea that the Negro were slaves. And you sitting up there as a white person, don't even know your history as a slave.
Right.
But
and the thing is, a Negro can be of any color.
Yep.
This is what they're not telling you. A Negro has nothing to do with color. In fact, it's about status. Right? So a Negro could have been pale white. They say it right after the Civil War. They had people saying, you know, we had 10 slave runaways put into the newspaper. 8 of them were for pale-skinned white people. So who was they really fighting for? And then the fact that I'm gonna go on the show in a second. I see you got something in the back. You want something? You want me to show that?
Yeah, whenever you're ready. No rush. Whenever you're ready.
They was no, I'm gonna show this real quick. What's I about to say?
Yeah, this was some wild, yeah, man. And it's crazy because this interview is very old. I think it's like, you know,
it's about 12 years old.
Yeah, so come on now. They've been trying to put it out there because black folks is no more of a slave race than white people was.
And then this is why I can't take people serious who say destroy the books, don't read the books. They forgot with the old adage when they say if you really want to hide something from a nigga, put it in a book. The thing is, they wasn't lying. They yes, they tell a lot of lies, but boy, they trying to tell a lot of truth. Why? Because they know over time history gets distorted.
And
so
I want
somebody got to tell the truth. Where do you tell it?
Now, because I want to go back to something that you said about the Negro could be any color. Because there were so many white people who were Negro in origin or had Negro or what they would call Negro blood or ancestry or whatever, but because of the way they looked, they were able to slide past that. But in fact, they came from us too.
No, the thing is, that's not even necessarily true all the time. Because all you had to do to be a Negro was to be born from a mother who was in an enslaved or indentured status.
Because you are what your mother is in America, and including the Roman slave code, that's the same thing.
Yeah, whatever you from, you got to remember when I'm coming across your back with this whip and I'm trying to tell somebody to do what I want them to do, I don't care what color you is. That's when it's about that dollar at the end of the day. And if I don't make you move, I starve. I'm about to beat your feet. This is where all that stuff come from. And I'm not saying that didn't nobody get beat. I'm saying the stories come from somewhere. I'm just saying they're not yours. Hello. They're not yours. They put these stories on you. Didn't the man sat here in Sharice and said it's not true. The whole slave narrative, none of it, how they told it. And for the most part, it's totally in reverse.
It is. That's one thing Dane got all the way 100% correct.
I gotta get that brother that.
Credit for that because it's true. And what they've done is really, what it's done.
Salute to Dan Calloway, by the way, too.
Yeah, it's such a mental thing that it's really caused a lot of mental headache with this because they don't understand why reparations aren't being passed. And like you got to understand it's because your people wasn't the slaves.
Your people wasn't enslaved. And what you're going to find out is they're going to let you bring every bit of slave narrative up. They're not going to stop you. Why? because they can always deny it. Remember, this is just business. And what they're going to end up bringing out is and telling the truth in the end of the day, if somebody ever presses this issue fully, right, is that no, bro, you enslaved us. That's when the whole nigga Indian same thing is gonna, the beans are gonna get spilled.
Yep. And I always tell people, why you think your ass ain't up on the chopping block to get deported? It's a reason for that.
Because they can't.
He ain't even came up in the conversation and won't come up in it.
And won't come up in it. They know we don't come from anywhere.
They know we home. They know we home, and we was home when they got here. We was home when they were getting sentenced over here. A lot of those motherfuckers wouldn't be, a lot of them wouldn't be civilized if it wasn't for us. They wouldn't know how to work on this land if it wasn't for us. They wouldn't even wash their butt if it wasn't for us. Let's be real about that. We just got to take a second to really, process about it.
Yeah.
Because they got issues taking showers now, white folks. Because I done seen those clips of white people saying they only take a shower once a week or some wild shit like that. I said, bro, I guess some things never change.
Man, now, shout out to the good white folk out there. You did what I'm talking about. This ain't no, you did what I'm talking about. This ain't about you. This ain't about you. But there's some nasty niggas out there, right? And I learned growing up, you did what I'm talking about, because I come up in a mixed community. It's niggas, it's Mexicans, it's Arabs, it's everybody. It's white folks, it's everybody, right? East Indians, everybody. When you get you some white friends, what you find out is many of them don't use wash rags.
Nope.
That blew my mind. I learned this when I was a little kid, when I, teenager. You did what I'm talking about. You start to sleep over at your homeboy crib. You did what I'm talking about. Their food tastes a little different. You did what I'm talking about. He loved to eat at your crib. You did what I'm talking about. Yep. It's just, listen, you start to notice. You dig what I'm talking about? And then you dig this so-called broke thing. Their house may be a little bit bigger than yours, right? True. But when you go in it, they ain't got shit in it. Right? You in a nice ass neighborhood, big old house. You ain't got no furniture. Then you find out that your homeboy, who daddy pushed big Benz, big Benz, mama got minivan and something else faucet, new on EBT. It start to hit a little different. You did what I'm talking about? It start to hit a little different when you had that experience, when you get you some white friends.
Yep.
Because everybody is not even on no bullshit. They don't even know to be on bullshit. Some of them just ignorant as anybody else.
This is
you did what I'm talking about. You did what I'm talking about. And think about all the hard work it was put in by the government and powers that be to keep niggas this dumb.
Yep. Keep us ignorant from the truth. That's all. And it's like, it really takes a discernment of the heart. It really does take, once you come out of that matrix, young, you be like, fuck. Like, I can't believe this shit. I can't believe we allowed this to go on.
You know what I call that discernment of the heart? I call it my bullshit-o-meter. That thing ain't never off. It's always on. You dig what I'm talking about? It ain't never been. Only time I've been wrong is when I didn't listen to it.
Come on. And that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? It's like we got to really take heed to this stuff when we see this perpetual hold down of our group. And it's a reason for all of this shit, young. And that's why I be telling people we got to learn, we got to discern and understand it. Because the most important part up here that I want to read on here, right here, and this is like partially.
Blow that up a little bit.
Okay, let me.
Where is this? Oh, you saying? Oh no, you gotta blow it up.
I'm making it bigger. Yeah, you just got to make it put it fully on the screen. But I did make it a little bit bigger. Hopefully, they could see that.
Yeah, you can see it. Go ahead.
So y'all know I was already talking about Michael Hoffman. You know, he got a 3-part interview as well on this same thing, and he really goes into detail. But one thing that really stood out was right here. Up to 1/2 of all the arrivals in the American colonies were white slaves, and they were America's first slaves.
Wait a minute. Wait. Say that again.
Up to 1/2 of all the arrivals in the American colonies were white slaves, and they were America's first slaves. These whites were slaves for life, long before blacks ever were. Long before blacks ever were. This slavery was even hereditary. White children born to white slaves were enslaved too. Whites were auctioned on the block with children sold and separated from their parents and wives, sold and separated from their husbands. Free black property owners strutted the streets of northern and southern American cities, while white slaves were worked to death in the sugar mills of Barbados and Jamaica and the plantations of Virginia.
Hold on, wait a minute. The story should sound very familiar.
Don't it?
It should sound very familiar. Ain't this the story they told about
Told
you?
us that you was on the block getting sold, that our families were the ones being ripped apart and thrown into slavery. So some of us will never see our families again.
And these whites were slaves for life, long before let's dodge the hijack, because we don't know what a black is. A black ain't necessarily a Negro. A black ain't necessarily anything. It has no nationality. But if they're trying to put Aboriginal in there, the free Aboriginal, what they say, these whites were slaves long before the Indians ever were. What blacks? The African blacks? Because nobody's denying that nobody from Africa ever came. Shit, they brought them from Europe for shit show. For show. And then what they don't know, sis, this is what they don't know, and this is what got to be looked at. Around 1700, the early 1700s, for some reason, I haven't even figured out why, but there was a population explosion in Brittany. Right around 1700s, 1690s to 1720s. I mean, the population just went nuts. Right? This is proven out through the numbers and stuff, but I haven't even looking at it, even tipped off. I was tipped off to it. It shows the numbers, but it still doesn't say why. Right? So that's one of the things I'm looking into. You dig what I'm saying? Personally, why this population explosion in Scotland, slave land? You dig what I'm talking about? In Ireland, slave land. In England, slave land. The population goes crazy for some reason. Right? The white women who was only really having one baby, maybe two, start having 10. Right? Maybe 3 or 4 of them will die, but 6, 7 of them live. You dig what I'm talking about? I was doing some genealogical work because I've been finding that many of these people that they've been telling us historically are pale-faced white people is niggas.
Yep.
They're Europeans in many parts. Some half European nigga, half American Indian, European, half you make the twisted dog, it could be twisted up. But we generally, when we see that skin lighten up, when the skin lightens up, it's from some type of African heritage. Think about it. If a blue black nigga from America and a blue black African get together, how you gonna tell the baby is a mulatto? You ain't. But when that African get with that Indian and it always produces a mulatto, and we know the Indian is copper colored, well, where did that lightning come from? Africa.
And look what they say right here, Cosmo. The establishment has created the misnomer of indentured servitude to explain away and minimize the fact of white slavery. But bound whites.
Hold on, wait. This is American History Month, y'all. This is the stuff they didn't tell us. Huh? Read that one more time, sis. Read it right where you started at.
I will. The establishment has created the misnomer of indentured servitude to explain away and minimize the fact of white slavery. The fact of white slavery, family. But bound whites in early America called themselves slaves. 9/10 of the white slavery in America was conducted without indentures of any kind, but according to the so-called, quote, custom of the country, as it was known, which was lifetime slavery administered by the white slave merchants themselves.
Damn. Listen, 9/10, that's crazy. 9 out of every 10 people who were brought to the Americas, and then they're saying European, but they specifically talking about pale skin Europeans, right? Remember, when we say white, we talking about the social construct. When they say white, they talking about skin. Remember, they don't never twist that up. In all historiology or archaeology, they let you know when they say white, they talking about white people with white skin. So it ain't no mistaking, even though there are black Europeans coming over here who are being called white. They're letting you know it don't matter. They're indenturing these niggas anyway, and they specifically talking about the pale skin ones. This is why the cover up.
And I was laughing so hard, Cosmo, because it said that free black property owners strutted the streets of northern and southern American cities.
Right. Strutting the streets.
They said strutting the streets, baby.
You know what you strut the streets in? Your best clothes,
strutting,
your click clacks, your big Sunday hats.
That's
what you strut the streets in.
Play with
that. Don't sound like no Davy Crockett hat, and you did what I'm talking about. Fur-lined, seal-skin, moccasin pants. No, we was flavor. We gave you the idea for suits. Huh? We taught the Victorians. Where do you think they get their flavor from?
Come on now.
How do you think them Germans got black?
They can't deny this. They can't deny this. It's crazy to me. You know, I mean, it's really an amazing thing to discover. Then you'll begin to understand how prominent and significant we really are and were then. It still is now, but now it's the oppressive factor that comes into play, especially as history goes on, where we're talking about the Jim Crow laws era, you know, the Black Codes era, all of those segregation laws and things like that. All of that stuff comes into play much later, family. Y'all gotta understand. These folks
Much,
done
much
whole
better.
usurp.
You cooking. Hold on, let me put a little extra paprika on them. Watch this. Keep reading.
I got you.
Paprika. Here we go.
Okay.
We about to kick the cloud real quick. Because, hey, look, all that pie in the sky, everything they thought they told you, we about to expose everything. Kick the clouds out the sky, sis. Watch this.
So let's keep rolling. In George Sandy's Laws for Virginia, whites were enslaved, quote, forever.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. How do we get past that?
Can't.
How do we get where we at? So obviously, what this is letting y'all know is white ain't what they told you it was. White is a status. Guess what? How much you want to bet when you change your Aboriginal status, your race turns to white. Why?
Their status was
white. It changes.
Yep, their status was changed. Initially, like we just read, it was perpetual. Their slavery, they were bound to this type of slavery. This was perpetual. This was supposed to happen.
So when you prove your mama's mama wasn't a slave, guess what? You're not.
Come on now.
You can't at that point then be black or enslaved forever. Now, but now look, the system, think about this. This is why white people don't know they have white supremacy. They don't know it. Why? Because the system works without their knowledge. It's just when it tallies white versus black or anything else, it reads different. But when you read American Indian, it reads like white. Why? Because they get the same benefits.
Come on.
Your race changes.
Yep.
Where is the goat at? If you think I'm playing, the goat changed their status. New passport, everything. She's an American Indian, right? Her race changed. She got a 4-star passport. Everybody else only get 3. You can only get 5. Huh? Most people only got 2. Right? So she got 4 stars and her race changed. She changed her status, her race changed. Why? Because in the system, they treat you different when you white. You don't know why you just got $150 break on your insurance.
And shoot, we could even take it a step further, because even when the January 6th thing happened and we watched these police not do a motherfucking thing to those people when they walked up in the Capitol, because of what they are on paper, right? Like the idea of white is almost like white folks can't be touched almost.
Do you understand that not only did Trump wipe their slate clean, they already got back paying reparations for the time they was in there?
Hey, I'm not even mad about it.
No.
I'm not even mad about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I be feeling like
why would in a white America, why wouldn't you be white?
They went right through the source. I ain't mad at them. They let them in.
This is why they gave the trick was black power. Black power, brother. Black power, brother.
But then they got down on people. They had all that militarized action and everything when those Black Lives Matter riots was going on. But but the only reason why those folks got locked up was because of that new president that came in, and they kept them folks in jail like that.
And then once we figured out who was doing all the burning and looting, it's white police.
Yep. Sending in agents.
The police lit their own station on fire.
Come on.
Police shooting dummy rounds at people. Huh? They had bricks set up along the walkway. Why would you just leave bricks there?
Oh, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Huh? Just random piles of bricks along the way that these people are going to be demonstrating.
Yep. And that's how we know it's a status thing now.
Yeah.
It's the status thing now. But like, do not be fooled. It was a status thing then, and it was changed. It's crazy. But this is what was going on. Somehow we ended up being on the butt end of history. Like we was just some slaves getting beat the fuck out of.
Yeah, I got your boy too. I wanted to let this cook some more, but y'all go check that out. No, I want you to read what you read.
Yeah, because I
got your boy Howard in a breakdown. He must have did about the same time the other dude on they were white and they were slaves.
Yeah.
I got a breakdown on him too, but I want you to keep cooking because you are putting foot. And no. The kids call it today. They call it putting. They say BTA.
Built the ass.
Belt the ass. Belt the ass. You putting belt the ass.
Putting that
you
belt
ever
right
woke
to
up
that
out your sleep with a belt? I did. I got whooped out my sleep one time. But I was deserved it. I deserved it. I ain't gonna lie. I was bad.
Hey,
you think I'm talking about?
I know about the ass whooping days.
And that's what's going on right now. We whooping our people about they sleep. Get up. And if you be soft with them and timid and try to be all, oh, come on, guys. Oh, man, they'll walk over you.
I'm trying to tell you, people, man.
Nah, we ain't going for the okie doke and you gonna talk about banana in the tailpipe no more. No. Put your foot on their neck. Look, this is BTA. Look, watch what she about to say, y'all. Watch what this next paragraph says. Start one more time. I know I keep cutting it off, but look what the very first sentence says. This is that American history that they not telling you. This is not what they told us. Cook, sis.
In George Sandy's law for Virginia, whites were enslaved, quote unquote, forever. The service of whites bound to Berkeley's 100 was deemed, quote, perpetual. Study 17th century colonial America, sifting the documents, the jargon, and the statutes on both sides of the Atlantic, and one will discover that white slavery was a far more extensive operation than, quote, black enslavement. It is when we come to the 18th century that one begins to encounter more, quote, servitude on the basis of a contract of indenture. But even in that period, there was kidnapping of Anglo-Saxons into slavery as well as convict slavery. Ships carrying white slaves to America often lost half their slaves to death. According to historian Sharon V. Salinger, quote, scattered data reveal that the morality for white servants at a certain times equaled that for black slaves in the, quote, Middle Passage, and during other periods actually exceeded the death rate for black slaves. Salinger reports a death rate of 10 to 20% over the entire 18th century for black slaves on board ships en route to America, compared with a death rate of 25% for white slaves en route to America.
That's crazy.
Come on.
That's crazy.
And it's almost over. In the founding era of colonial America, both white and black slaves were referred to as servants. Once the term slavery came into universal usage, a word derived from the enslavement of Slavic peoples.
Uh-oh.
Come on.
Uh-oh. This is why we don't see the use of. Is this why we don't see the use of the word slavery to the 1800s? Because we don't see a mass injection of Slavic people into the end of the 1800s into America. Is that why? Is that why by that time you've been called 100 different names before slavery gets even applied to you?
Come on now. And then for them to even say that white servants at a certain time equaled that for black slaves in the Middle Passage. Do you hear that?
How, Sway? That's not what you told us.
Get out the garden.
That's not what you told us.
So who was on this Middle Passage? White Slavs from Africa? Who was on this Middle Passage? Because, come on now.
They do call it the Guinea Coast. Guineas do come from Greece and Italy and France and Spain and Portugal.
Ireland. Come on now.
We do see Tunisia. We do see the Mali people. We do see the Ottoman Turks along with the Corsairs enslaving people all throughout the Mediterranean, all up the Atlantic coast, all the way from Portugal into Russia, along with the European Isles or the Brittany Isles of Scotland, Ireland, and England. So from the same time, right, 1500s to 1800s, the same time that supposedly niggas in America is being took from Africa, right? From the western coast of Africa, we find millions of transplanted Europeans in the same place being enslaved and being called Apri, or African, cave dweller, troglodyte, same word.
Let's go.
At the same time, we see a melanated people ruling in Europe. We see melanated people doing deals with of Europe, doing deals with melanated people of African heritage. You think to sell people that look like both of them when it's a ready stock of already enslaved people in the coast that's named after them? Guinea. Who would the blue black African around them been fighting with when you got millions of these niggas on your coast?
I'm trying to tell you, we was here in plentiful numbers.
We was already here. We didn't go from the, and then we didn't go over there going to get anybody.
Exactly.
Right. If you wanted, if you got brought here, you got brought here from somebody who was from over there. We ain't come get y'all. We ain't asked for you. You offered up all you had. That was your people stock. Just so at the time that Americans were still doing an indenture system. Right? Yeah, my brother taught my kids how to make shoes. He makes shoes. Guess what? I make horseshoe. I make horseshoes. I'm an ironsmith. So guess what I teach his boys?
Same shit.
Okay.
And you pass it down.
That's what a true indenture is. And that's the system that they were coming into. And this is why they were hiding it, because we were humane. We didn't whip or rape nobody. We didn't hold we ain't keep you cold in the winter. We ain't cut your feet off if you ran away. It was a job. And if you don't eat, you don't work, you don't eat, nigga, you gonna starve.
Fact.
So it's in your best benefit to go ahead, get yourself together, get some money together because we is paying you. It's a job. But it just pays off after you do the work. But along the whole long time, who pay for everything else? That's the system, y'all. That's the system. Nothing evil, no raping, no nothing. It was, I need a job done. You have laborers. Give them to me for this amount of time. Because see, it didn't have to be years. People sometimes indentured people to learn a skill. It maybe it took a year.
And that's what I tell people about the plantations and stuff. You think white folks wasn't on them?
Come on.
They was on them right with us. If that's the case.
Not only that, blew my wig back when I found out that they was paying Africans to come over here and fight for the North in the Civil War and the South.
Oh yeah, that's blowing my wig.
Listen, the crazy part is the North paying Africans and Europeans, and so is the South paying Africans and Europeans to fight on their side. So many of the Africans came to and fought on the Confederate side. They were free. They were free, like your boy Saeed. Saeed. He didn't even come over here and fight. He ended up being a clerical nigga. But he came over here from Nigeria, a free man, in 1860.
Yep. Right. That's what I told people. I'm like, bro, they didn't come here to much later. These Africans they're talking about much later. These folks, they weren't always here. They came.
And then they paid them. They gave them land. And you did what I'm talking about, to come over here and fight. And then they fought on the Confederate side and lost. And then after it was over, they just switched side, just didn't talk about they was fighting on the side of the Confederacy. Huh? Saeed wrote a whole goddamn memoir. Don't tell you he fought on the side of the Confederacy at all. He don't even tell you that.
He said
he tell you my people, the Nigerians, coming over here and fighting for the Confederacy was what we was just doing. They was paying these niggas, man. You ain't come over here like that. You ain't getting this why you ain't gonna get no reparations, nigga, because it wasn't about that. It was about war.
And
you got genocided.
Now though, Cosma, they getting paid now to be here. The same thing. The folks coming over here is getting paid.
Hold on, and after both times, what they get? Civil rights. They got civil rights 100 years back from each other. Right?
Yeah, this was
1865, 1965. You know what I mean?
It makes sense. It makes sense because we know for a fact that Africa, or the continent of Africa, in certain places in it, wasn't colonized until the 1800s. People like the
late 1800s.
That's that.
And then dig this. What I had to slow down and put together was in 1870 to, let's just say, 1900, the beginning of 30 years, the beginning of Reconstruction in America, right? They had the carving up of Africa at the same time. Europe is carving up Africa, right?
Yeah.
Colonizers are carving up America. Huh? They call it Reconstruction. What'd you reconstruct? It already had to be a building.
Right.
But you sure came out that mug with a brand new constitution. In that constitution, you gave people born here in the 13th Amendment, you supposedly eradicated slavery, except when you catch a charge. So in a sense, the niggas who was already in jail during this so-called civil rights and freeing of the slaves was already slaves and continued to be slaves because of statutes of law.
Facts. And
You
that's
dig
what
what I'm
they that's what they be missing. It's when the law changed that a lot of this shit changed. And people started writing these stories and started telling it from their perspective, that we get this whirlwind of confusion and bullshit that's been
Right.
perpetuated on us. It's wild.
Because
But like,
one of the things I had to learn was that slavery didn't stop.
nope. We still
It
going
didn't
through
stop.
It
How
never
could it?
stopped.
And you still have prisons. How could it?
Yeah, that's
During
involuntary.
the time, if the law says if you gotta charge you a slave, so the niggas who already in the jail instantly get turned into slaves. If you catch a charge after that, you get turned to slave. So slavery just went behind the law or behind the guise of law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it changed its name to peonage.
Exactly. Shoot, let me hurry up and finish this up so you can get back to your
Yeah.
lesson.
No, we cooking because I ain't gonna be but too much of a minute. You dig what I'm talking about? I gotta go get the babies and everything in a little while, but you cooking though.
Yeah, because I knew I said I had to get back in here and get settled and everything, because I knew I was going to hit this link. When I saw what I had up on the screen, I said, yeah, I'm gonna come on up today, because I've been taking a step back. I just been kind of chilling and observing what's been going on, just kind of trying to get more things in my arsenal. Just been cooling.
Yeah.
But every time we talk about something like this, I'm always down to talk about it, because I think that we do need to understand what has happened in history and the changes that they've made to history, like blatant change to hide their history. It's sick.
Yeah.
So it said contemporary observers described it as white slavery and referred to indentured servants as white slaves. A letter by white slave Elizabeth Spriggs in Maryland to her father, John Spriggs, in London, England, September 22nd, 1756, describes some of the conditions that these white slaves lived under. Quote, "Honored father, oh dear father, I am sure you'll pity your distressed daughter. What we unfortunate English people suffer here is beyond the probability of you in England to conceive. Let it suffice that I am one of the unhappy number, toiling day and night, and very often in the horse's druggery, with only the comfort of hearing me called, 'You bitch, you did not do half enough.' Then I am tied up and whipped to that degree that you's not serve an animal. I have scarce anything but Indian corn and salt to eat, and that even begrudged. Nay, many Negroes are better used, after slaving, after master's pleasure. What rest we can get is to wrap ourselves up in a blanket and lay upon the ground. This is the deplorable condition your poor Betty endures."
Dang.
So yeah, they, but they telling us that this shit was going on and happening to us.
I ain't never got one of them stories. I ain't never heard one of them before.
Toiling day and night.
Yeah, I got them songs that said like and before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. That's the stuff that's the stuff we was getting. Nigga, we would die before. It's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. This is what it's some people who was willing to live on their knees. It was just some people who wasn't. That's what happened to our ancestors. They fought. Never laid down. Never laid down.
Yeah, I
Go
thought
ahead.
this.
Sis.
Shoot, that's the end of it. Shoot, I
Man.
thought it was beautiful. You know, like just to open up our eyes. I just wanted. It's small, but the book is actually obviously goes into much more details in regard to this. But you know, this is the type of shit that we got to really, really get into so that people can understand what really happened. And you know, we're gonna keep busting it out the bag every time. Like, we're not about to keep playing about this because people need to understand who they were in history. Yeah, this the one. Who they were in
Yeah.
history, what was really going on. Yeah, so these are like, I think they're like 9-minute intervals, each one of 3. So you know, you can
I
start whenever
think you know what I'm gonna do, because I think I'm gonna just keep this short and sweet. You dig what I'm talking about, and come back a little later, hop on and cook on this one, because this a whole different, you know what I mean? And it could just be just more of the American History Month. You know, you dig what I'm talking about, the stuff that they didn't tell us. You dig what I'm talking about? And we'll just cook on this too. You dig what I'm saying? And get that algorithm pumping. You dig what I'm saying? We'll get that algorithm moving. You dig what I'm saying? Get these boys to come on out and share that light that they got they holding on to. Niggas been cooking on this 15 years, huh? Uh-huh. You're gonna have to go and get that out. You're gonna have to go and get that out. Cause it don't seem like a lot of people, when this came back out, it hit like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think people
So
get really giddy.
yeah. So obviously, whatever you taught it, however you taught it the first time, you dig what I'm talking about. It was definitely worth bringing it back that second time to pick up those who didn't catch it the first time. Let alone the brand new people who just coming into this information. You dig what I'm saying? And it's so much. So much.
It goes so deep, man. It's a rabbit hole that seems like you just keep digging. That shit never stop.
It don't
be
never
like that.
stop.
Because you heard them, and even in the first joint, bro. Like, and I ain't gonna do too much rapping, but they literally said that shit. They literally said it. Like, just them even perpetuating this idea that like black equals slave. All of that is false.
Yeah.
All of that is false. And that's what they carried on in our history, carried on K through 12, taught our young kids that grew up and went to college and did all of that stuff. And you know, and here we are with a confused history. And now we got to make sense of it because they didn't want this to get out. Those folks went to the Vatican, they did all kinds of research to come to find this information, because when they were looking into slavery, they found nothing but white folks.
Man.
And it's white folks. You know what I mean?
It's just time, sis. It's just time to sit. The truth got to be told. They say all things shall be revealed, and things that are true or things that are in the dark will be brought to the light, and things that are in the light will be made everlasting. So you dig what I'm talking about? It's just that time. If it's gonna stand, it's gonna stand. But either way, it's gonna get exposed.
Yep. Because you got people like us looking for that truth. And we're gonna find it, baby. And we're gonna
find it. It'll find you. It'll find you.
One way or the other.
That's
One
right.
way or the other. What is you gonna do? And like
My great grandmama used to say, they don't know whether they want to shit or wine they watch.
Hey. And you know what's so interesting too? Because I got a great grandmother that's 101 years old. And when I talk to her, yes, shout out to my baby, 101. She'll be 102 in November, still kicking on that front porch. And on her land, in her house, walking good, talking good, everything, you know, in a beautiful sound mind. And I'm so grateful. You know, and I'm going to see her again real soon because we're going to really talk about this some more. Because when I asked her about the history of slavery in our family, she said that shit was non-existent. The way she shook her head about us being slaves, she was like, no.
Sharice, you got to record it.
I know.
You got to record it, sis.
I know. I have to record her, you know, because shoot, man, that baby kicking so good. I can see her living for even longer than 101.
And why her mind sharp, you dig what I'm saying? Just ask her everything.
Yep. Because
Ask
that's
her
the thing.
everything. Because think about how much stuff she forgot.
Yeah.
Let's just say in the last 20 years, let alone the last 60, 70, 80, 90 years.
Mm-hmm.
How much stuff have you forgot that you just on robot pilot with?
Yep. And she's already open to doing it for me though. You know, I had to talk to her and my, and my aunties about it because, they be trying to keep her, they don't be playing.
Grandma thugs. See, y'all think them niggas soft. No, they was hard. They came up different. Your grandmama is harder than you.
I know.
Your uncles and them niggas that's in the 60s, 70s, they was cut different. Them niggas was steel. They wasn't no give in them niggas. You had to be that. And then you on the other end, sometimes you had to be so strong you had to swallow your pride.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. You can always lash out. You can always fight. That's easy. But when somebody depending on you to come home, boy, it hit different. It'll make you grow up quick.
I'm telling you.
It'll make you grow up quick.
Because then somebody tried to tell me that she wasn't alive in slavery times. I said no, but she would be aware if her mother and father was a slave or her grandmother was. She
at 102, shit, goddamn. Would nobody know better? Would nobody on earth know better?
I'm telling you. Because that's why I used to hate.
Wasn't none, and she tell you it wasn't none, then it wasn't none.
It wasn't none. That's it. And that's what I kept telling people. I'm like, bro, she said it wasn't none. That's it. There's nothing else to say about it. Because she still owns her land now. To this day.
Wait a minute. No, Sharice. She must be a slave. They raped her. They beat her. They took her land and killed her. What?
And she been
where?
In that.
What was my granddaddy and them doing that whole time?
Exactly. And most of
them
the
niggas
men
wasn't shooting up.
They was definitely using guns.
Right. Look, come on, man. Listen. You can't tell me they bred a nigga like me and they wasn't shooting.
Yeah.
They wasn't. They had no gangster in them. Yeah, right. And it was 13 of them niggas. That's just my grandmama kids.
Come on.
Her mama had 16.
Yep. And see, and it's the reverse on my mother's side because my grandmother said that her mother had, it was like what, 13 of them. My grandmother, brothers and sisters. But see, her grandmother only had one child, her mother. And then her mother ended up having all the kids.
See?
But see, her grandmother had a lot of sisters, and my grandmother knew about our Indian origins. Like she said, look, we ain't from Africa. And my grandmother is like 72. She would be considered young.
Yeah.
And, she said it. She said, look, we ain't from no Africa. That's all she said.
That's real talk.
A lie. What's she gonna lie for? She ain't got nothing to lie for. Like at 72 years old. What is she gonna lie about?
Nothing about it. Never heard nothing about it. Somebody told her about it.
That's it.
You did what I'm talking about. You ain't never experienced nothing African. And then to find out that despite this Pan-African narrative, you did what I'm talking about, that they came over here, got beaten, enslaved, and lost their culture. To find out that the Africans that came over here didn't lose their culture at all.
Speak on it.
So to now understand, right, that they didn't lose their culture, but on the flip side, we don't have any African culture.
Nope.
None. Not a lick, a stitch, a bit.
And that's what I beat them niggas up on TikTok about. I said, because ain't nobody gonna beat no African culture, language, or none of that out of you. That's not gonna happen. You will never lose anything from your homeland. You will never lose that. You will always know who you are.
Over here 40 years.
Come on,
40
now.
years. They kids got kids now, right?
Yep.
They've been over here just since the 60s.
That's it.
And they still talk like this, my nigga.
Yep. Some of them since 92.
Right.
It was more slaves coming over. Not more slaves. It was more Africans coming over in 92 than the entire slave trade combined. So what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? I keep asking them that. These folks just got here. They will never lose their culture. Trust me, if we was Africans, we would never lose that. Nigga, I said, do you eat fufu? You don't
Why
eat
you
that shit?
can't find that grandmama who last name Mbekwe?
I'm telling you, show me your African cousin. I get them on now. Show me my authentic African cousin, bro. They always
call him
shut
up real quick. Hit your
They
cousin
always shut up.
over there in the Ifa tribe. Call that
It's your
nigga.
Cameroon cousin, nigga. Because I'm
Right.
tired of it.
Right. And
Show
the
me your
crazy
authentic
part,
African ancestors, bro. No, your folks from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, motherfucking Virginia, bitch. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Stop coming at us. If you show me that shit on your DNA test, shut up. Because that's the only reason why people should be taking their DNA test, to find their actual living relatives. Anything else is obsolete.
right. And they're gonna be here in America.
Period.
Second, third, fourth cousins, first cousins that you probably didn't know about, but they're gonna be right here.
You're gonna find your white cousins first.
Ooh wee.
They get mad at me for that.
Ooh
But
wee.
you
They don't want to tell that part that Pop was hunching. Pop was over there hunching in the hay barrels. Yeah, he was. That's that whole thing, finding a haystack, a needle in a haystack. Yeah. I'll poke your ass.
Yeah, I'm on these Africans' head. Y'all ass want to go to Africa. Man, y'all Africans so bad. Take y'all ass back there. They giving
You
y'all
ain't going.
citizenship now. Go the fuck on. If you swear
ain't
that's who you
going.
are,
You ain't going. You don't got it in you to go, because a lot of y'all really just confused Indians, confused Aboriginals.
That's all. And it's hard for them to believe that they're organic to the land based off what they've been taught.
Oh,
And I'm like, bro, you don't even see what's really happening in front of your face. That's why these Native Americans is getting getting deported too. Take y'all ass back to Asia and Mexico, where y'all ass stop. 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 I told people, I said those people are offsprings of Spanish conquistadors.
And also, let's just be Southeast Asians, Dravidian. You dig what I'm talking about? Koreans, Thais. You dig what I'm saying? They don't never want to put in that Pacific slave trade, or what they call, look this up, y'all. It's called the coolie trade. COOLIES or IE, coolie trade. They still down there today, running the Caribbean. These Indians, these East Indians that's mixed in with the niggas over here, they call them coolies, right? Them Southeast Islanders that came over here and mixed in with the nigga stock over here, they call them coolies too. Go look at a lot of them Asians. Some of them that come over there, the Jamaican and stuff, they third generation now, fourth, fifth, sixth generation now. They start coming over here in the 1900s. You did what I'm talking about, 1800s, 1900s. You did what I'm talking about. They start getting dumped over here after the gold rush, a California gold rush. A lot of them indentures themselves to go over there and try to find some gold. You dig what I'm talking about? Became willing slaves. So these people go on to become your chinos, called mestizos, You dig what I'm talking about? And then finally to your modern Native Americans. These people don't exist primarily. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't no Mongoloidal people in America before Europeans got here. That's not true. But even them, I give 2,000 years. And when they got here, me and your granddaddy was like, who is y'all niggas? Where the hell y'all? Y'all cool? You look hungry.
Come on.
You dig what I'm talking about? So we was already here doing what we do.
Been doing it, strutting the streets. You heard them.
Listen, you gotta have click clacks on the strut. Who had pumps on in the early 1800s? Wasn't none of these natives in the woods with no pumps on. Huh? Hair fried, dyed, laid to the side, dress spinning, smelling like, looking like money. Who was doing that? The same people doing it today. They've always known you are the knowledge in motion. They coined it. They got to coin it. They had to coin a phrase for you. We coined a phrase for them so they could energize it and capitalize off of it. We call it hip hop. It's just who you is.
Exactly.
Knowledge in motion. Hip hop.
Yeah, we on their ass, Cosmo.
Man, nigga, they don't. They be trying to say Cosmo crazy like a goddamn fox.
Mm-hmm.
Now I tell you some shit. Now, just because you ain't understand it, and you may be suffering from a little bit of cognitive dissonance because I just hit you with something you've lived your whole 50-year life going on that you never even thought about existed. And then I showed it to you because I don't say nothing I can't prove. I don't even say it. Ain't even no use of me saying it. I could just keep it in the gang and just speculate on it till we can prove it yay or nay. And if I prove it nay, you don't even know that I think this. Because I don't say it out my mouth. You dig what I'm talking about? I'd rather be thought a fool than to open up my mouth and remove all doubt.
On their ass, bro.
On their ass. Tight ass.
Yeah.
Tight
ass. I hate what they did, man. And now we got, but it's a beautiful thing too, because now we can enlighten our people about the truth. And now you ain't got to sit over here and feel a certain type of way because now we know. You know what I'm saying? I hope y'all get this information out to everybody. Share it with anybody. Share those videos. Man, share stuff out and let people see it, because I know a lot of people are really misinformed.
Y'all gotta plug me in on this Twitter stuff, because I never even been on there, or TikTok.
Man, that's a whole nother world over that junk. You gotta fight.
I never even been on it. Yeah, I never even been on there. Yeah, I'm old school, bro. I'm not from the take the picture eras. I didn't even want to do this.
Man, and they so young with it over there on TikTok. I got a girl from fucking somewhere out there in far Virginia somewhere trying to tell me what DC Go-Go is. Excuse me?
What?
You about to tell? And then she misrepresented her source because they like to compare it to like African music. And I said, Go-Go sounds nothing like African music. I said, Go-Go. I said, man, I think Go-Go comes from a sound. Comes from a
conversation. Mid-conversation, right? This is how you test them. Just real quick. You just test them. You say, hey, sardines. and if they don't come back with the right call, any nigga from DC, if I can go into DC, look, we in malls. Listen, it could be dead quiet in the mall. If I say sardines,
hey,
honey, what they gonna say? What they gonna say?
Listen, and pork and beans, yeah.
Come on. Right now in Chocolate City, right now. So if you not tapped in like that, if you first of all, if you're not from there, shut up.
Man, it be so many, man, it be a bunch of foreigners on it. I said, first of all, y'all don't got no type of DC accent talking about my city like y'all doing. You haven't been to DC, but you know anything about my city, our culture, how we grew up, none of that shit. I said that is born and bred 100% American from their own creation. I said Chuck Brown even said, like, see, she misrepresented her source because she put up a source from the Informer talking about all this African shit, but right up at the top of that shit, it said Chuck Brown was reluctant to say that go-go came from Africa. He was reluctant to agree to that shit. Even he knew it wasn't African.
He knew better.
Cut the shit. That's what I say. You read people read what they want to read, and they highlight, little parts. And I said, I don't want to hear none of that. I was like, you like 15 years younger than me, shawty. You don't know what you talking about at all.
And dig this. Chuck Brown ain't never seen an African play
it. Come on now. Get into it.
He ain't seen one. Not one.
I don't know what they talking about. I said Chuck Brown is from North Carolina.
Hold on, let me play my joint, man. What's my nigga? Hold on, man. Let me play my joint. What's my niggas? Niggas. What's the name of that damn band? Niggas ain't real. Is a what? How say?
Backyard band.
That's backyard.
Yeah,
that's backyard. Them niggas hard.
Niggas ain't real. Right from DC, and I was telling her, I said, no, they used to bang on buckets and trash cans because they couldn't afford instruments at one point. Like, that's how far back that shit go. I'm like, I know our culture, bro. That shit is not an culture. Cut it out.
This shit. Hold on, I want to get this. I just want to get.
There goes some of you niggas ain't real right there, and they performed it live, whichever one works.
Yeah, I just want to.
Get the song. It's up there. Click the first one.
This one right here.
I don't know how long they're gonna play it for. That's a short.
Yeah.
Now go back up. Yeah, right there, with the fire.
Now taxes.
Yeah.
It's getting the TurboTax app.
I want to.
And file your taxes yourself, 100% free.
This part too. Hey. Hold on, man.
Yeah, you gotta let them warm up.
I clicked the damn button.
Nigga. Yeah. One time for that wild kingdom. Wild life, my man's in them. Big streets out. Yeah. Come on. Drop for the lyrics. Just for y'all niggas to hear it.
Oh, they just cutting up right now, y'all. They just getting into the groove. You dig what I'm talking about? Wait till that thing drop. You know what I'm talking about? Hey.
That's for real.
Come on.
Send that crowd up.
When y'all niggas come in the club, it's a privilege. That's party. That's for party.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Watch when they drop the hook on this thing, though.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey.
Yeah. 4K11.
Hey.
Most go-go's is recorded live.
Yeah. They getting it. Come on. Hey. Hey. Hey.
Hey, wait, like this here. Yo, before I get this off, it's another message. One more time, hope everybody gets it. Like the speed of light, that's because I roll nothing but the blood. One time, gotta keep it simple. Mike, it's my life, birthday, from the people. Gotta rock for my blood, rest in peace. One time, my clubs is deceased. I gotta do it one more time. This shit is for TJ, lost my mind. I just seen him yesterday, just talked to him one time. Now he's gone again. Like my next again, my best friends in end. It'll never be the end. One more time for the making of life. Let's stop pulling guns and killing at night. Let's love. Let's smoke that bud. You can do it yourself. Show your love. I know everybody wanna live. You don't wanna die. They make baby mama survive. Making sequels in the family killing. One time y'all gotta get with the ceiling. The life shit
Hey.
we do. We speaking motherfucking truth to you. Yo, I've been doing this shit since a young nigga. One time, rest in peace to all my niggas. Let's stop that killing. Recreate time.
Come on, bring that hook in.
Yeah. It's dedicated to my man TJ. MCs for life. Lost a good nigga. One love. One love. One love.
Man. I'll wreck that. Hey. Hey. All right, that's hard. Nigga ain't real. I mean, you ain't real. Well, who you being false to? Nobody but yourself. I mean, you niggas are real. That's on the porch. Backyard on the porch.
Hey, I love when they get into that pocket beat, but it's all good. Yes,
man, you dig what I'm saying? That's what's going on right now, man. Feeling that vibe, getting in, you know, getting in on code with your people, man. It's cool to love your people.
Yes.
So it's okay to, you know what I mean? You know, it's okay to love them. We were taught to hate ourselves.
Yep.
You dig what I'm talking about? Well, then guess what? You gotta unlearn it and learn something new. That's as simple as that. And then start with us, y'all. It just is what it is. Now that we aware, stuff can start changing. You dig what I'm talking about? I got hit. I ain't gonna sit here in front like I didn't get hit with the roots.
Okay.
They sauced the nigga. And then I was young. I didn't have the eyes to see. You dig what I'm talking about? Did they show OJ, a big ass Indian, chasing this African down? I didn't. It didn't. It was just OJ. You dig what I'm saying? It didn't sit that the nigga and the Indian kind of looked alike. And while the African nigga was enslaved, the Indian had a job catching him if he ran away.
Come on now.
It just never. Sometimes you see it. Sometimes it's sitting in your face. Sometimes it's not. You dig what I'm talking about? You always kind of get it at your own time. You know, you kind of get it at your own time. Well, I got to get up out of here, sis.
All right.
But before I go, I'm gonna probably go on a little later. But before I go, you could do something for me real quick.
Oh, it depends on what it is.
I just need you to breathe in and let that light in, because I'm Cosmon and I'm out. Peace.
And oh yeah, put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you feeling up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you breathing rarefied air, oh yeah. Put that Super 7 in the air. Tell me how you feeling when you feel it up there. When you in the sky breathing rarefied air. When you breathing rarefied air, just that Japheth, that Chow Mein, that Papabull, that Tao Mein, since sunset in the arc of Wayne, my brain moving like Tao Sang, so ass above, it's so below, that up and that down thing, this flow is atmospherian, I call that a ground game, see water is knowledge, so if I'm teaching, you're learning, so how your God make a sun without vortexian current, see the pattern is ponic, I'm reaching out for my people, oh watch me flow through your speakers, you feel the force of the equals, and when the force hit the equal, I'm taking off like an eagle. Police popped the pastor yesterday for pushing Puerto. My DNA is Moshe. Mix that thing with higher water. My spirit rate is OTN. It's just a higher order. Got more light than Kavita. Rap a lot just like Tila. Went from sinner to saint. Shout out my big homie Sela. Got more torque than a sports car. Got more work than a door stop. And the 4 million I make, I'm giving the Dr. Umar. Oh yeah. Put that Super 7